Hello, everyone. Welcome to the NFL First Look. NFL Week 12 is ahead of us, and it's going to be a weird slate. You're going to see a lot of Jonathan Taylor coming up no matter where you're building lineups today. We're going to talk about if that's a good play, along with everything else in the slate that you need to know going position by position before we yield to the deeper dive crew, the live before lock crew. It all goes down here today on Stokastic. As always, I'm Chris Spags, joined by a man who I've enjoyed over the last few weeks. We're bringing him back again, even though he's a Browns fan, and we're going to have to see what he thinks about that today. He's Matt Belman at Fantasy Tips. Matt, how are you doing, Matt?
Doing pretty good, man. Happy to be on here with you. It is my fault for being a couple minutes late, so I will take all the blame for that. But yeah, we've had a fun time over the past couple weeks. Excited to keep it going.
Definitely a lot to hit on today, and we're going to get into it right away. And I guess before we get into the position by position of it all, I think the main thing that jumps out to me, if we're going to give an overview of the slate, is the Jonathan Taylor chalk. We are projecting at Stokastic about 30% ownership going Jonathan Taylor's way. Around the industry as well, 30 to 35% ownership I've seen. So I guess for me, the main thing is that I still don't love the matchup going against Tampa Bay. It's not quite the same one as it's been in past years where Tampa Bay, we've talked about this on the show. It's not the shutdown run defense that it was back in the days of Ndamukong Suh and all those guys, but still a top tier run defense. And Matt, it feels like today with just a kind of gross running back slate where we've talked a lot the last few weeks about guys like Devin Singletary, a lot of the cheaper guys have come up. It really is Jonathan Taylor and not a whole lot else to love at projection. So where are you going to fall in this great Jonathan Taylor debate?
I like that game a lot, and it's tough because you're right. Tampa is not like the cake matchup that you just jam running backs against. It's not the difficult matchup that you avoid running backs against either. And for me, their pass defense is so atrocious. It opens up a lot in the running game. So I like Taylor here. I like this game a lot. I understand why anyone would have a different take there. I personally don't mind the ownership on him.
Sim-wise, there is a lot going on there. We're going to see a lot of Jonathan Taylor coming up in lineups for sure. But let's just get into the running backs now. So Jonathan Taylor going to lead off the ownership overall, as I mentioned, 31%, 30 to 31% based on where you want to round up. Isaiah Pacheco coming in at number 2, Rachaad White at number 3, all these guys over 6K. And we'll go one by one here. We talked about Taylor a little bit. As Matt mentioned, it is a pretty good matchup overall for the pass game in Indianapolis for sure. Going against Tampa Bay, it's given up a lot of production downfield. One of the weakest teams in terms of the expected points added metrics that I look at for Sports Info Solutions. So something there where they can move the ball downfield. Taylor can have success for sure. Pacheco, though, coming up a lot against Las Vegas. Rachaad White, questionable tag for him. I think the assumption is that he'll go and that teams are now over-reporting for injuries based on some of the concerns with Joe Burrow coming up. But Pacheco, Rachaad White, Matt, are these guys that are, I guess, interesting pivots to you because they're going to be very chalky, and normally they're players that I feel like people aren't flocking to quite as much.
It did come out this morning that White is totally fine. Like they just put him on the report as a precaution. So that obviously makes me feel better about going there. I like him quite a bit. Same reasons I like Taylor. I like that game. I'm not afraid to get away from Pacheco. You know, they're on the road here. This is a team that hasn't been great offensively. The Raiders actually have been very good defensively. So I wouldn't be surprised if that game just doesn't have a ton of points or KC isn't in a position where they're just jamming Pacheco in. I will say, though, part of this conversation to me is another running back belongs here, and I just want to get your opinion. Why is Derrick Henry not getting the ownership of these other guys?
I think it's the workload. I mean, the fact that he has yielded so much this year to Tyjae Spears would be, I think it jumps out to me, like Henry on the year playing 33 snaps per game, Tyjae Spears playing 31, and then routes per game as well. Tyjae Spears 15 per game, 7.6 for Derrick Henry. So it's just not the same role. I agree. The matchup against Carolina is a soft one. You know, we talked about that a lot in previous weeks. Expecting a Tony Pollard bounce back game against Carolina and all of that. Carolina very bad in the red zone as well, giving up 0.2 EPA per red zone rush. So I agree with you that, you know, Derrick Henry in the spot should be a little bit more appealing. But what if you see the touchdown go Tyjae Spears' way? I feel like that's like the one risk point, whereas like Pacheco has less guys competing than usual. No McKinnon this week. And also no Kadarius Toney, no McCole Hardman. So a lot of those gimmicky kind of short range touches go away. It's like, I get the football logic of it, but I agree in terms of just a pure ceiling, like Derrick Henry, we know can put up 40. And I don't think it's even Isaiah Pacheco's bag.
No, that makes a lot of sense. The workload issues with Henry are real. He is in a very good spot at home against Carolina, but that makes sense. You've got 3 guys that, you know, I guess aren't conceding as many touches as he is right now. So I get it.
Do you believe that Pacheco's a much better play than usual? Because we know Kansas City can move in a bunch of different directions. But again, you lose those touches for Kadarius Toney, you lose those touches from Mecole Hardman. And in particular, you lose the third and long kind of plays that go the way of Jerick McKinnon for the most part, as well as some red zone work where if it's 3rd and 10 and they're at the 15-yard line, like that's going McKinnon's way. It's not going Pacheco's. But do you believe that he's like a meaningfully better play? Because he's obviously wasn't priced for this role. And I guess if you were to really make that case, like if we're going to say that he gets a consolidation of touches, Pacheco's maybe a 7K back. So I feel like in some respects, I kind of dislike him the least of that top 3.
I get that. I'll counter that by saying, like, how much work was Jerick McKinnon really getting anyways? This is an offense that's still, funneled through Travis Kelce, and Pacheco is going to need to score. Like, he doesn't catch enough balls. He's probably not just going to get enough on the ground where it's going to be fine. So you're going to need him to get in the box. And that's completely possible here. I mean, like you said, he's going to have a really nice workload today. He just doesn't stand out to me as a better play than the other guys we're talking about. I do understand why he's getting the ownership, and I don't have like a fade Pacheco stance. I just don't think he looks really any better or worse than those other guys.
Yeah, I guess if I were to make the case for Pacheco, he's getting 3 red zone touches a game. McKinnon's vacating 0.6 red zone touches a game. McKinnon also gets 1.5 inside the 10-yard line. McKinnon vacating 0.3. So like the hope would be that you get about 5 red zone touches in this game, or 4 to 5 for Pacheco. And I think that's a chance to get there, though. We have seen running backs, bust in a similar spot against Vegas. Vegas, for whatever it's worth, like not a good defense by any stretch, but a lot of bend but don't break with this Vegas defense. And that could be something that hurts Pacheco. But I'm intrigued by him. A guy that I'm less intrigued by, though, who I do get the logic why he's going to pick up ownership, but Ramondre Stevenson, Matt, going to be going for 5,800 on DraftKings, 16% ownership going his way. Are you willing to go to the Patriots against the Giants team that, rare case for the Patriots, a team that's equally as bad as they are?
Like, I get it. If I were multi-entering, I'd definitely have some Stevenson exposure. I wouldn't fade him. He doesn't look like an auto lock play to me, though. I know that New England's like a 4.5 point favorite on the road here. That's pretty crazy. I don't expect a ton of points in this game. Both these offenses stink. So I think that Stevenson is the best play from New England, but not a guy that I'm like going out of my way to jam in. I like the guys we just talked about at basically the same price point.
Yeah, so the case for Stevenson would be just the hope that the Giants certainly capable of turning the ball over. We did see the one good game for Tommy DeVito, the one good game we might see from him forever going against the Commanders D. And it is a similarly good spot going against the Patriots D that's been getting weaker as well by the week. Now the bottom team in the AFC. But Ramondre, the usage pretty tough. Certainly enough Zeke touches going his way, especially in the red zone. 1.4 red zone touches a game compared to 2.2 for Ramondre. I'm with the field on Ramondre, about 60% sim ownership before the show. So that's where I'm landing with it. But I do think Ramondre, for some people, probably going to appeal a lot more. Speaking of James Conner, another guy that I know people like out there going against the Rams this week, a matchup that I think the markets out there, the betting markets seem to be skewing towards a little bit of a low scoring game. I think people are going to target this one as a shootout, though. Are you willing to go to James Conner here, Matt, with given the fact that Kyler Murray takes a lot of rushing yards off the table, a lot of rushing opportunities as well? And frankly, this Arizona offense, even though it has looked a lot better with Kyler, I guess you could make the case it's somewhat better with Kyler. Not an explosive run game offense by any stretch. So Conner as a top 5 owned guy, I assume you'd rather have Derrick Henry or maybe even a Kyren Williams.
I would, but I think that I'd slightly prefer Conner to Stevenson. They're very, very close to me. The thing I like about Conner, everything you said is right. Like, he is not that explosive of a back. Arizona offense hasn't been elite. Kyler does, take away some of his cookies, but Kyler also extends drives. He gets them into the red zone, which is what you need Conner. So again, far from like I need to play Conner here, but I certainly get it. There are plenty of game scripts here where Conner plays out really well.
And then one guy that I would hit on outside the top 10, of course, we'll kind of talk about anybody else that stands out to both me and Matt here at running back. And of course, we're going to go position by position and go after the other positions after this one. But Kyren Williams, I'm intrigued by. I think there's some concerns here coming off of 5 weeks and not playing, was on the IR stint and then got a bonus week, I believe, to hold himself out, but now should hopefully be full go, is practicing full go all week long, is going to be active today. Before he was going out, 5.2 red zone touches a game, 2 inside the 10-yard line per game. That's basically Christian McCaffrey level red zone work. He's going against an Arizona defense that is not very good across the board, should allow some production. Are you getting to Kyren at all? And I guess, do you trust his role coming back from this injury where he has been out for, more than a month?
I do not. I think he's a fine tournament play. He's getting less ownership than those other guys we talked about, but he's not coming in like low owned. So out of all the guys we talked about so far, he's the guy I'm probably most out on, just because I don't love the Rams here. I think he's going to be owned appropriately, and I don't know what to make of the workload. Like, yeah, they could go back to giving him, all the carries and all the touches out of the backfield, but they made a point of saying yesterday they didn't want to do that. It's coach speak. We've heard coaches lie all the time, so who knows what to believe. I'm just willing to let other people take that risk, and I like the guys around him more.
Yeah, I think the one risk point would be that maybe Royce Freeman carves out a few goal line touches. That is sort of his game style. And they cut Darrell Henderson, who's more of the pass game back, more traditional back, more of the third and long back. So I could see that argument for sure. I would like to err on the side of playing more Kyron than not, but 13% ownership, I think, is about right. And then sim-wise before the show, actually was not getting a lot of Kyron at all. So I might have to up that one for myself, but sim-wise, I definitely not seeming like the strongest play. One guy I'm curious about your take on, because again, it was an outlier role for him playing against the Commanders. Saquon Barkley was involved heavily in the pass game there, caught some pass game touchdowns, part of why he had his biggest fantasy day of the year. Saquon, to me, still grades out as kind of a mid running back, which has been one of my takes throughout the entire offseason that I got a lot of people angry about, but he's a negative 0.18 per rush guy in terms of the EPA metrics, negative 0.11 per pass. He's out there for so much, though. He's getting almost 24 intended touches. Like, he's a pure volume back. He's not an efficiency back. But if he does have a different role here where he is getting the checkdowns, is actually getting some downfield passes, he could be a different play entirely than what he's been the last year and change, where he has been kind of used as a traditional running back with some checkdowns. Are you willing to go to Saquon here with him, one of the higher priced backs, but also a very live price point pivot to Jonathan Taylor?
I think that, hindsight's 2020 always. Last week was the week to get on a really owned Saquon. Like, he's not going to be chalkier, but he's not going to be really low owned. I know that a couple people, including our boss man, Alex Baker, took down a milli maker with Saquon last week. He was really, really low owned in a spot against Washington. People didn't expect them to score. Again, I like Saquon here because he's just an example of a really, really good football player that can go off on any given week. I don't like this game environment for basically anyone, though.
Yeah, I could see that being a thing that would certainly skew a lot of people away from Saquon, even with the big box score game last week. I would struggle with it, though, because I do know the public loves Saquon a lot more than I do, and I feel like if they have any reason to play him, sometimes they do get there, but about 13% ownership projected by Stochastic, seeing around 10% around the industry as well. So I'll have a taste of Saquon in the hopes that he does have this outlier upside as a pass catcher, but I don't have the faith that he can get there again. Again, live price point pivot to Jonathan Taylor for sure, but hard to ever bank on a back with a 15-point implied total in his game as being this outlier player you want to get to. Anybody else, Matt, that you want to plan a flag for? Because we do have some names that we haven't brought up. Eytan, Bijan Robinson, Javonte Williams looked like he'd be chalkier earlier in the week. Now not going to be the case. DeAndre Swift, Josh Jacobs, even Jalen Warren, I guess, if you want to buy in on the new offensive coordinator, new play caller there, leaning in on him. The markets don't seem like they are betting market-wise, but any guys you want to plan a flag for?
I think Warren's probably too cheap for his upside, but that's about it, just because they still have Najee Harris, who's going to take half the carries. This offense isn't an offense I really want a ton of exposure to. And as far as other backs go, like, not really. I don't mind the chalky running backs here. We've seen there are some teams on bye. There were 4 games over the Thanksgiving week, so we're kind of limited in the amount of players we get to choose from. And I like the running backs that are getting ownership. I don't feel the need to go down really to guys that aren't getting love. The one guy I would call out, and this is not just a Browns homer, because I really don't like the Browns in this game from a DFS perspective, Jerome Ford. He hasn't been great, but he was really good a couple weeks ago in Baltimore, and Denver's run D is atrocious. So if there was a game for him to go off, if you will, it's today. I'm not going to prioritize him, but just wanted to call him out at 5,600.
I agree. Actually, I'm intrigued by Jerome Ford. I was actually just looking up the snap count. So the one concern point would be that Jerome Ford had 37 snaps at Kareem Hunt's 33 last week. So that's about the closest we can get to.
There's a lot of concerns, to be honest. Like, there's that. He's not that good. Their offense probably isn't that good with DTR. So again, I don't love him, but just wanted to call him out.
I think the Denver defense is so bad that, and it's one of the things where they've been masked by a lot of luck over the last month, where they've held teams to 20, 25 points, but it's catches off the hands. It's like Josh Allen being blinded on a pick where he's just clearly in his own head. It's been a lot of mistakes, I think, for teams going against Denver than it is Denver's defense being so good at putting themselves in position. But the Cleveland offense better than I do. It's like, do you trust DTR to have an outlier day? No, but I think he can get close to like a league average day against Denver's defense just because they're so bad.
Denver's D, I'm with you. They're not good, but in the NFL, they're getting, if you get takeaways, then that can really turn around your fortunes. And that's what they're doing right now. If you want to say they're getting lucky and getting takeaways, I'm with you. Again, this isn't a game I want like a ton of exposure to, but I do think you're 100% right in that Denver's defense is not good, and it's just getting masked by these turnovers and drop balls, et cetera, et cetera. So picking a piece or two from Cleveland isn't the worst idea in the world.
Yeah, John Prince in the chat saying Denver's defense is not bad anymore. They're stopping legit offenses. They're not stopping them. Like,
no.
This is actually one of my biggest pain points, because when we had that the slate with the Bills against Denver, and people were then copying in my YouTube comments on my channel Splash Play, which if you want to go check out, you should. But like basically we're saying like, oh, like they've stopped all these teams. They're holding teams to 20 points, and it's like they were holding Jordan Love to 20 points when he had an error-filled day. They're holding these teams. Kansas City had the same matchup twice, one of which Mahomes had the flu and clearly was not himself out there. Like, this is still not a good Denver defense. On the year, 0.06 EPA per dropback, 0.07 EPA per pass, 0.04 EPA per rush. They're not great downfield. They give up 400 yards per game. Like, if you're buying into the results of this, like, I just think it's incorrect. And I think if you target Denver down the home stretch, you're going to see good results. I don't know if Cleveland's going to get it today with 18 implied points, but it is still like, it's a soft defense. And I think at some point, somebody's going to beat up on Denver again, and maybe not 70 points, but they could hang a 40 burger. Like, somebody can on Denver at some point down the home stretch.
100% with you there. You look at their games earlier in the year, and it's not just Denver. The Bears had a ton of success against them. The Raiders had a ton of success against them. So I'm with you. It might not be today because Cleveland's starting a rookie quarterback on the road, et cetera, et cetera. But this Denver defense is one that I am circling to want to play guys against in the near future. It only makes me like that spot even more if they do survive again today.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. And the chat, I think the chat's struggling with this one. I'm seeing some points here about, let's see, our defense is creating turnovers isn't partly their own doing. I mean, so like turnovers happen as a result of like pressure being created or passes being deflected. And Denver's not an outlier at any of those things. They create pressure at a 17% rate, which is not good given that they blitz 28% of the time. They also don't deflect passes at that highly of a rate. I guess if you're going deep against them, you're deflecting 14% of the passes. But besides that, it's like a 5% pass deflection rate. So no, they're not doing anything good. And they miss tackles at a 25% clip. So like these are all bad stats for Denver. And again, I don't think Cleveland has the horses right now to put up a big game. Like DTR, I think just makes everybody kind of collapse in a little bit more. But against a good team who doesn't get unlucky and isn't in their own head and firing their offensive coordinator, like somebody's going to light up Denver soon. And I think if you're treating Denver like they're a whole different team, I just think that's a mistake. But this is me now, Matt. We're just completely railing against the chat.
No, I'm like 100% with you though. And this is like important to talk about. You know, I think that these like kind of tangents are important. People want to hear them, and I like talking about them.
Yeah, and I just think too that people are like really results.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah,
too results oriented. Like you think about that Buffalo game. Buffalo played one of the worst games of offensive football, not even just from them, that I've seen all year. You know, they make a couple more plays in that game, whether it's the drop balls, et cetera. You're looking at a completely different outcome. So we see this very eye to eye. And again, we're also eye to eye in that we don't know if Cleveland can take advantage of it today because they're starting a rookie quarterback, but it's worth at least, you know, going down that rabbit hole.
And SMP bringing up DVOA, which is, I'm not the one to bring DVOA up to because I know how that sausage is made from having run that business for a couple of years. I would say that the EPA metrics for me personally would be a little bit more valuable, but that's me coming with a little bit of bias. So, you know, I do use what you want to use. If you want to fade Denver's defense the rest of the year, that's up to you guys. But ultimately, we're just going to tell you what we see and always give you guys the best takes we can. And that's the process here on Stokastic always. And let's keep it moving here. Let's talk about the wide receivers coming up. And guys, if you can, please smash that like button, whether you agree with the takes or not. Again, we always show you the work here. We show you the process here on Stokastic. We want you guys to win money and do better, whether it is just winning more money relative to what you're doing or actually taking down a big tournament and being part of the Stokastic Hall of Fame and all of that. We just want you guys to do well here. So we're all on the same page. Smash the like button. And of course, subscribe if for some reason you are not part of the 94,000 people subscribe to Stokastic. Please join the family now and subscribe. And of course, hang out for the deeper dive and live before lock coming up right after this show. Well, let's talk some wide receivers here. Of course, wide receivers a key position here to build out what we're going to do stack wise. And we talk about the wide receivers first because frankly, the wide receivers should dictate your stacks more than the QB should in a lot of respects. And the chalk play of the week, which surprises me, but brings me a lot of joy as a man that has been submarined by Anthony Richardson's situation on the year, but have a lot of Michael Pittman as a result in best ball. Michael Pittman, 21% ownership, projected a wide receiver by Stokastic right now. We talked earlier, Matt, about Tampa Bay being a defense that certainly struggles against the pass. Michael Pittman could be a huge target earner. We do have Josh Downs coming back in, hopefully a little bit healthier with the knee stuff he's had recently. So Pittman in this spot, going to be chalky. Are you willing to be with the field? About 1/5 of the field being on Michael Pittman.
I am. I don't love the ownership, but I like this game a lot. It's, for me, by far the best game for DFS purposes today. He looks like the number one wideout for Indy right now. I like Downs a little bit more considering the ownership and the price decreased, but kind of splitting hairs there. I like both of them quite a bit. I like Minshew running it back. So yeah, I like Pittman a ton here. And yeah, 20% is chalky, but think about that compared to like an NBA slate. It's really not. There's so many good plays on NFL slates that usually guys just don't get too high owned where you have to worry about it. And I feel similarly about that here.
Yeah, and for what it's worth for people out there, I think they might have a hard time buying in. There are a lot of alternate markets supporting a bit of a higher over-under on this one, and we have seen Indianapolis move up to 24 implied points as well. So I think people struggle a little bit with like the Colts not being a team that feels like it deserves chalky ownership, but it's just a matchup against Tampa Bay. Like I played Will Levis against Tampa Bay a couple of weeks ago to some amount, not like a portfolio defining amount, but enough because it's just such a soft matchup where if it hits the right way against Tampa Bay, like you could be looking at the game that goes for 50 points and sees 300 plus passing yards for Gardner Minshew. So I like Pittman on that front, but I guess you have any reservations, Matt, about going heavy on the Colts here, just given that they're certainly not a good team, but they are going to be one of the chalkiest teams by far across every position.
It does give me a little bit of reservation whenever you have a popular team that's just not very good. But again, I go back to what you just said. This is a team that can move the ball. They're facing a non-good defense. And this is a team that's had success against good defenses. I'll go back to the Cleveland game. They're basically the only team this year that's had sustained drives and been able to put up touchdowns against this Browns defense. No reason they can't do it here. And Minshew is one of these really good DFS quarterbacks, in my opinion. Like when you've got backup quarterbacks and guys that shouldn't be starting, a lot of times they're just awful and they can't move the ball downfield. They can't do anything. That's not Gardner Minshew. He's going to move the ball. He's going to run a little bit. He might make a mistake here or there, but that doesn't really affect you from a DFS perspective. So I like the Colts a lot here. I'm actually willing to go heavier on the Colts and just go all out as opposed to fading them.
Yeah, I also think too that going to Colts stacks without Taylor is an interesting approach to try to get leverage on Taylor, where you have Downs picking up ownership, you have Pittman picking up some ownership, not a lot for the rest of the guys. Alec Pierce, we know what's there for the most part. Kylan Granson, not the highest upside guy, but you could do a QB +2 without Taylor, and I'd feel pretty comfortable about that. And again, the matchup is pretty pristine. Tampa Bay on the year, throws of under 20 air yards, 74% completion rate allowed for a 0.18 EPA. On deep throws as well, a 44% completion rate allowed for a 0.55 EPA. So like they're giving up a lot of production everywhere. And for Gardner Minshew, who's pretty good, but not only, a 64% catchable ball rate for him is basically league average. He could have one of his better days here efficiency wise. And I think that certainly is going to benefit Pittman, but also could benefit Downs. Like, I don't know. I think there's a lot of game theory logic to the Colts today, even if you're not going with Jonathan Taylor.
I 100% agree.
Yeah, so that's why the Colts spot is what it is. And again, highest implied total for them they've had in a while. So a lot of things favoring the Colts in this matchup. So if you're curious why Pittman and Taylor would be so highly ranked, that is definitely a big part of it. AJ Brown going to be the number 2 receiver ownership-wise at projecting right now. It's stochastic. A little bit of a fall off, 18% projected ownership for him. AJ Brown, we did see have that down game last time out where he really disappointed against the Chiefs, but now facing Buffalo, a team that on the year not defending well out wide, especially after losing Tre'Davious White. They are giving up a 0.29 EPA out wide, which is one of the worst marks in the league. AJ Brown, we know, also could be a bit of a man coverage beater. The Buffalo defense does run man at about a league average 22% rate. But are you willing to go back to AJ Brown, Matt, given that we did see Devontae Smith get a little bit more work than Dallas Goedert, but Brown, we know, has been a slate breaker a lot of times this year?
Certainly willing to go back there. I mean, it's AJ Brown, right? He's one of the best players in football, one of the best fantasy assets. That said, I do think the ownership is a little bit high for him being 9K. Now, the one thing I'll say is coming off a bad game or a down game for him, that he's been in Hurts' ear all week. He wants the ball more than basically anyone in the league, aside from maybe Stephon Diggs, who's opposite him here today. So, yeah, AJ Brown looks really, really good. I don't think you have to force feed him into your lineup at that price point. He's really, really expensive. But as far as like who I would expect to be the highest scoring wide receiver on the slate, he's got to be right up there as the top guy.
Yeah, it's just the price point doesn't offer you as many options as usual. We don't have our Keenan Allens. We don't have our Tyreek Hills. We don't have a healthy Cooper Kupp. We have a Cooper Kupp coming off an ankle injury at 8K. Stephon Diggs not shown the upside recently. I guess a little bit of a tournament play for Stephon Diggs for sure, under 10% owned. But AJ Brown, like on his face, is a projection play as well as a play that we know has a ceiling. I think looks very strong. So it looks like right now I'll be with the field on AJ Brown. Not much more than it, but a little bit more than it. And I'm okay with that. I think that's where AJ Brown probably should be in this spot, especially coming off the down week. But I agree that it's just a tough price point and also a good amount of ownership expected to go his way. Are you going Cooper Kupp's way? Because he's projected to be the highest, third highest guy overall at wide receiver. Again, the ankle injury. I thought he wasn't going to play this week. I'm a little bit surprised to see him with, the leg injuries kind of accumulating for him that they would put him out there. But he wants to go. He's going to go. Is there any risk to you or too much risk, I guess, to play Cooper Kupp at about 14.4% ownership?
I could see that ownership being higher also, just because he's so cheap for what we're used to seeing him as. People will be drawn to that price point. I get it. I don't think he's a bad play by any means. It's a good matchup against Arizona. I don't like that the ownership's already there. I like the guys around him, maybe not more, but more considering the ownership levels. So I don't know if he's 100% healthy. I think the field is just automatically assuming he is. I think there's a little bit more risk going into that than they're willing to acknowledge.
Yeah, and I think too, a little bit of bias. Maybe he has gone off against Arizona a lot in the past. Obviously, not the same Arizona team. But I agree. Like Cooper Kupp, I would have really liked Cooper Kupp to be out because I think it would have consolidated things more for Puka Nacua as well as for Kyren Williams. But Kupp, I actually think he'll be properly owned at about the 14%. Like I don't think he goes over too much because of the Q tag and the injury stuff.
That's fair.
But maybe, like 10 to 15 feels about right. I don't want to get much more above that. And actually, sim-wise before the show, I got 10% Cooper Kupp. So naturally came a little bit under the field. And to me, that's probably about right for me. But of course, if you want to go above, I certainly want to judge that. Tank Dell, another guy who's top 5, and a little bit surprised to see this one here. On Underdog, I know he was a very popular play in the Battle Royale streets where he's going top 5 in some drafts out there. Tank Dell having some outlier days most recently, but it's now getting pretty pronounced, Matt, that we are seeing the public start to gravitate more towards Tank Dell when Nico Collins is still out there, Robert Woods still in the mix, Dalton Schultz still out there, definitely taking some work away. Are you willing to be with a fairly chalky Tank Dell, though? I guess relative to like a normal slate, 14% ownership is not insane.
So if I were choosing one game, I like the Indy Tampa game more than the Houston Jacksonville game, but certainly you want to mix pieces together. And you can make a really, really good argument that Tank Dell is still too cheap for his current production and just how well he's played all year. There certainly isn't a big sample size, so I'm not going to project him like that, but he's outproduced this price tag numerous weeks this season. So I see no reason why he wouldn't be one of the stronger plays again this week.
Yeah, I like Houston still conceptually. It's one of those games where I really thought, again, there'd be some alternate under markets out there that are going to say, oh, this could get to 50, this could get to 55. There really weren't any with a high probability on it. So that's something that has kind of helped me land on the more correct games more recently. But Tank, hard to ignore the upside. Against Jacksonville as well, certainly a matchup where you'd expect Houston actually have to push things to the limit a little bit more just because of the fact that Jacksonville, we know, could put up a lot of points, and they actually showed it for the first time last week with Trevor Lawrence and Calvin Ridley both having outlier days. Speaking of Calvin Ridley in the same game, he's a number 5 projected overall wide receiver, based on the same ownership as Tank Dell. Are you willing to go back to Ridley with some things out there? And I don't know if you buy into this at all, Matt, but Zay Jones being in, perhaps helping out Ridley, even though Zay Jones takes away the target share. But Ridley's route tree looked completely different last week. So maybe a little bit of viability to that theory.
Maybe. I don't know if I'm buying it. I personally haven't looked enough into it to say one way or the other. I would find it difficult to believe that, Zay Jones being in just is an automatic Ridley boost, because why would that be? But again, I'm not sure. He looks good here. I think his 6K price tag is fair. I don't think he looks any different than Christian Kirk, who is basically the same price point. They're also getting very similar ownership. It looks like Lawrence and these Jacksonville receivers are going to be popular. And I get it. Like, it's a good matchup against Houston. They have a pretty condensed route tree, so you want Ridley and Kirk in there. I don't have any strong take on these guys, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm with you on Jacksonville. I think they come up very well sim-wise. I'm certainly getting a good amount of Trevor Lawrence, getting more than the field. Trevor Lawrence getting more than the field of Evan Ingram, which we'll talk about later, which I don't really want to be there, but it does seem like ownership-wise, I am getting there, getting more than the field of Christian Kirk. But I am getting a little bit under on Calvin Ridley, which I do like Ridley in the spot on the year. It is a pretty good matchup going out wide against Houston, a 0.22 EPA there, which would be towards the higher end of the league. So for Calvin Ridley, who's running most of his routes outside, I think it could benefit him. But at a certain point, like Zay Jones is going to catch some actual targets and actually get some work if Calvin Ridley does get covered. So that's the risk concern there, is that the pie gets a little bit smaller with Zay Jones in, but I do think there's some things that do support the fact that Calvin Ridley might be a different player, or at least was used differently last week with Zay Jones back in, where they just weren't allowing him to get the go up and get it kind of balls that frankly Calvin Ridley can't get at this point. He needs to be schemed open, and it did seem like they schemed him up or better last week, so we'll see if that carries on another week. Chris Olave, Pop Douglas, these are the other chalk guys coming up behind Christian Kirk and Calvin Ridley. Pop Douglas, kind of interesting play to see here because Juju was looking like a chalk play earlier in the week at a 3K minimum. We're now seeing Demario Douglas, aka Pop Douglas, come up a bit more. Do you want any part of this New England pass catching core, given that there's clearly a lot of opportunity, but can they execute enough to get it there against the Giants?
Not really. Like, I don't mind it, especially with a guy like Douglas at 4,400. But I'm not going out of my way to get a ton of pieces from this game. I mentioned that when we talked about Barkley and Stevenson. Now, I could be totally wrong here. A lot of times in sports, when you've got two middling bad teams, a lot of times that plays to the over. I just don't see that here. I don't think the offenses are going to do enough to move the ball. I like the other games we've talked about much more from a fantasy perspective. Again, I like Douglas because he's 4,400, but I'm certainly not trying to jam in a ton of this New England passing game. Mac Jones sucks.
Yeah, no, I think that's a completely fair way to look at it for sure. Mac Jones going to be the starter again. If you are curious, he did have the competition against Bailey Zappi and practice this week, and Mac Jones won. So we will see that once again. And yeah, maybe a shot at one last good game for Mac Jones, but you certainly are playing on the least likely outcome with that game being another one under 20 implied points for New England. Chris Olave, we kind of breezed by real fast, but are you getting any New Orleans stacks with Derek Carr coming back in? I personally would have preferred to see Jameis get a start here. I think I'm not alone in that in the fantasy community, but Derek Carr certainly capable of keeping things moving on time. I feel like to me, this New Orleans game versus Atlanta, maybe skewing a little bit more towards the under, but how do you feel about Olave, given that he did show some life, at least with Jameis starting the ball last time?
I'm with you, and I feel like this game is shading towards the under more than the over. You know, you've got a division game here. These teams are very, very familiar with each other. Both teams need a win. Olave's priced correctly, so I like him here. He's got a decent, floor ceiling combination at 6,600. Would surely prefer if it were Jameis, but it's not. Everyone's working with Derek Carr here. So I do like Olave. I don't think that he's a guy like I like Tank Dell a little bit more. They're basically the same price point, but I understand why someone would go Olave there. I don't think that's crazy.
Yeah, I wish he were a little bit cheaper just because of the Derek Carr part of it. Like, he and Carr just, I feel like, have not been on the same page, where Jameis is out there and right away it's like Olave looks like a new man. So I get going there, but it hasn't been there for him and Carr on the year, and I don't know that I expect that to change. But, indoors at Atlanta can always be a track meet, so I get the logic for it for sure, but it's not a preferred play by my eyes. Deontay Johnson, Devontae Smith, Josh Downs, a few guys who different price points. So Deontay and Josh Downs, basically the same price point now. Are you getting any of these guys meaningfully here to close out the top 10 with Deontay, Devontae, and Josh Downs?
I'm not really buying the Deontay Johnson. I know you've got a little bit of a squeaky wheel with him getting into a fight with those guys at practice, but I can't buy Kenny Pickett. I'm just not doing it. I do like Devontae Smith and Josh Downs quite a bit. Two of my favorite receivers on the slate. You've seen Smith's price increase a little bit, but you've also seen A.J. Brown's price increase. Smith has been really, really productive whenever Dallas Goedert has been out. Doesn't mean it's going to happen today, but the numbers bear that out. So I think you could make a case for liking Smith more than A.J. Brown, considering their prices. Like, obviously, you'd expect Brown to score more fantasy points, but he's 2K more. I love Josh Downs here. Might be my favorite receiver on the slate. He's not getting the ownership of Pittman, coming in about half his owned. His upside is real. He should be fully healthy now after he was not playing a ton of snaps the past 2 weeks, but they've had a bye week. They were overseas. I think this is a big Josh Downs week.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Again, I do like the Pittman down stack as leverage against Jonathan Taylor, or included with it for sure. If we do see an outlier performance from Indianapolis, that's probably, you're going to pinpoint pretty well where that can go. And I think Josh Downs is one of those guys. Some names that are outside the top 10 for sure, but still picking up some ownership. Nico Collins, Puka Nacua, Marquise Brown, Justin Watson, 3K salary under 10% ownership with a lot of vacated routes going around for the Colts, or for the Chiefs this week. And Stephon Diggs, so I feel like it's very live as a tournament play. And frankly, you could also make a case, I think, for Adam Thielen and DeAndre Hopkins. Any of these guys that you want to cape for here, who we are hitting on a little bit here, but I don't know that I want to plant a flag for him, but maybe you do.
I like Diggs a lot if you can get there. The big problem with that game is the players you want are so expensive. So you talk about like the Indy Tampa game, you can get all those guys in the lineup if you want. You'll have to make some concessions and not roster some other guys, obviously. But with this Bills Eagles game, You've got the two highest quarterbacks, the two highest wide receivers, other pieces that are expensive. So you're really going to have to pick and choose there. I like Diggs a lot. I think you could make the case of going to him over AJ Brown, just considering the ownership. Diggs is another one of these alpha guys that's going to get a ton of targets. So no issue with Diggs at all. And the other guy that stands out to me here is Justin Watson. You talked about it with Pacheco. Like, they're missing guys. He was really honed in on Watson on Monday Night Football. He didn't have a great game, but he had a pretty good game for a 3K price tag. He got in the end zone. So he's a guy that I think you can look at, especially if you're spending up. Like, if you're going to a Diggs and an AJ Brown, you're going to need a cheap guy, multiple cheap guys. Watson looks like one of the better punt plays on the slate in my eyes.
Yeah, I agree. Now that Juju's projection has come down a lot across the industry, I think that he's the 3K guy that certainly looks the most appealing. And again, there's just a lot of vacated targets to go around. And to your Diggs point as well, I think that actually is kind of a unique game theory build where we are seeing chalky ownership for AJ Brown, also a good amount for Jalen Hurts, but you can go Hurts and Devontae Smith with Stephon Diggs instead, and that's a good way to get leverage there. Or you go Josh Allen and Diggs with Devontae Smith. I think there's some interesting ways to tackle that one where if Buffalo, Philadelphia ends up as the outlier game of the week, it certainly can, given the quality of both teams. I think that Diggs to me just really stands out as like 8% ownership might even be a little bit high. I think he could be closer to 5, which is how the box scores have been for him lately. And at a certain point, like Joe Brady has to feed this guy because he's the squeakiest wheel in the league, or it could be if things go the wrong way. For Diggs in this spot, like I think he's got tournament breaking upside and also like makes a lot of game theory sense.
I really like Buffalo in this spot to stay in this game within the number and to potentially win this game. I think the match is just really down on Buffalo right now. I view these teams as pretty even. So I like Buffalo to stay in this game a lot here.
Yeah, I think Philly's the better team, but I do think Buffalo looked a little bit rejuvenated with Joe Brady last week. I don't know if we're all the way there, but the matchup wasn't always, wasn't the greatest one for sure. But this spot, I think, not another tough matchup for sure, but I think that we could see some upside here. And at a certain point, Diggs has to go off. And I think against Philly, a little bit easier to do that than against the Jets. Let's keep it going, guys. But of course, we got to talk about our sponsor, Owner's Box, who helps us put on the show every single week here. In Owner's Box, if you like playing wide receivers, if you like playing anything that's not a defense, you're going to have a lot of fun in Owner's Box because they're doing a great thing over there where they're playing with the Superflex format. So it is a different format, not one that's as figured out as some of the other ones out there. Of course, you're playing on DraftKings. People know how to build lineups there. People know how to build lineups on FanDuel. If you play on Owner's Box, you're competing against less people overall, which does mean higher chance of overlay, higher chance as well of reduced rake if there is an overlay, but there's probably going to be overlay as there often is in Owner's Box because they're trying to get people in there. What you could do as well in Owner's Box, get your first deposit in the minimum of $10, and you'll be eligible to earn a bonus amount equal to that amount deposited, such as a $250 bonus for a $250 deposit. But you get up to $500. You could really build your bankroll for Owner's Box. And I can tell you too, as the season goes on, there's probably a little bit less people playing there because frankly, less people play DFS as the season goes on, as the war of attrition continues with their bankroll. So if you go to Owner's Box right now, you're probably in the best position right now to actually make some meaningful changes to your game to win more money. And of course, you could also get yourself a one $5 lightning lineups thing, which is actually pretty cool. It's like a Tinder for lineups where you're swiping through, you pick your lineups there, and the more you pick, the higher your prize becomes. So it is a fun game over at Owner's Box. Of course, you do have to be 18 years of age or older and see the site for terms and conditions for playthrough requirements. Of course, if you know someone who has a gambling problem, or if you do, call 1-800-GAMBLER. But if you don't have that gambling problem, go to Owner's Box and take advantage of that deposit. Details are down in the description down below, but check out Owner's Box, and we appreciate them supporting this show and, of course, supporting your bankroll as well. Anybody else at wide? Go ahead. Sorry. Oh, I was like, oh, that I thought Matt had a great point and said Jordan just wants Matt to look more beautiful, which is equally important.
We good right now?
Good. All right.
Sorry about that.
Anybody else wide receiver wise, Matt, you want to hit on, or we want to go through the rest of the positions?
No, I'm good on wide receiver. I think we touched on all the guys that are relevant.
All right, so let's keep it going. Guys, smash the like button if you can. Of course, we're always trying to do the best we can to give you guys the best takes here on Stokastic, and that includes this show first and foremost, literally, because we're the first show on today. So please go hit that like button and, of course, subscribe to Stokastic if you have not done so yet. Chalk tight ends of the week. Trey McBride once again popping up here again. Good matchup on paper against the Rams. Trey McBride has been a part of winning lineups over the last few weeks as well. Evan Ingram, number 2. If you had to choose one here, Matt, and I think my lean is similar as Evan Ingram, but I don't want to go that way for how I actually want to play. Trey McBride or Evan Ingram, who are you going with?
I'm going with Trey McBride easily for me, even with the ownership. Ingram's getting way too much love. Like, I understand McBride love. I'm not really feeling the Ingram love. Just as a shout out, because you asked me and I forgot to mention them, I also just wanted to call out the Tampa Bay wide receivers. That game's getting a ton of love, but Mike Evans and specifically Chris Godwin aren't. So just wanted to call that out. As far as tight ends goes, Trey McBride looks like the best on the board. I really, really like the idea of getting to Travis Kelce, though.
Travis Kelce, big upside as well, and not going to have chalky ownership in this spot. A lot of ownership going Isaiah Pacheco's way, as we talked about. Travis Kelce, we are seeing projected for 11% ownership. I actually did not get their sim-wise, which I agree would be a nice play to get to. No Taylor in attendance, though, right, for this one, unfortunately? I think she's on.
I don't think so. And I know that there's some stats going around, like the past 4 games against this Raiders D coordinator, he hasn't gone over like 40-some yards. But he did score 4 touchdowns in one of those games. So, like, that's kind of the nature of the beast with Kelce.
Yeah, for Kelce, too, I think the most interesting thing is going to be that you get away from this price here because you're seeing a lot of ownership go to Trey McBride, 4,700, a lot of ownership going to Ingram at 42, Dalton Kincaid at 53, David Njoku is behind Kelce at 41. So you are getting a completely different build right away if you get to Kelce. Do you think, though, he's going to be 11% owned? I feel like that kind of seems a little bit light to me, but maybe I would think closer to 15, 20 for him, just relative to the matchup and how, the Chiefs are very much favored to be putting it down on the Raiders.
I agree, only because I can't remember the last time I saw Kelce under 15% on a main slate like this. People just like to jam him in because he's by far the best tight end option. That said, he's coming off a non-great week. This offense has been pretty mediocre, and he's still expensive. So I do expect he comes in around 15%. I would take the over on 15, though, than the under on 10. So I'm with you there.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting matchup for Kelce. On the year, the Raiders given up a pretty high completion rate on throws of under 20 yards, a 76% completion rate, which is towards the highest marks of the league. And that is certainly where Kelce can thrive a little bit more. So I'm willing to be there. I think I'm going to be closer to 20% when I do some ROI boosts on the Sims, but I think naturally you might have to push them up a little bit more if you are using the Sims tool, because it does feel like the core lineups or the top 150 lineups are not giving you as much Kelce as I'd like to see. I do want to talk about Evan Ingram a little bit fast because he's been popping up a lot sim-wise, and that's part of why I'm terrified to not play him this week after he has eaten my lunch the last 2 weeks. I still worry about the role for him as well. The red zone work hasn't been there. I believe he still only has 1 red zone target on the year. But Evan Ingram at 4,200, is he like a trap play at this point, or is he still going to have a chance to hit the ceiling that literally won, best ball leagues last year with Evan Ingram going on that hot run down the home stretch?
I just don't really understand the ownership here. Like, I just don't get why he's more owned than David Njoku, who saw 15 targets last week. I get it. It's DTR. You don't feel comfortable with their offense, but Njoku is like the target monster at the tight end position right now. Again, if I were hand building one lineup, I can't imagine playing Ingram over Njoku. That said, he certainly has the upside just because he's got Trevor Lawrence throwing it to him. I think he's probably got higher upside than Njoku just because of that quarterback, and Jacksonville probably scores more than Cleveland. But on a projection level, I like Njoku significantly more.
And how much of that is your Cleveland Browns bias if we're going to rate that on a scale of 1 to 10?
Not really. I mean, again, I don't love the Browns offense here. I don't love Njoku. I just like him more than Evan Ingram.
Okay, I think it's reasonable. And the 15 targets, again, those 15 targets can go a lot further if the Broncos defense is bad, like we've talked about. And certainly
he had Njoku, 4 drops last week also.
Yeah, that's not great. But no. DTR balls are not going to be the best balls coming out. I'm sure somebody out there is going to say pause to that.
The thing about DTR, and this is interesting, before DTR, I believe it was Josh Allen had the hardest thrown ball at the combine. DTR tied him. So he throws a really, really hard ball, and you could see it last week. And again, he's not going to be as crisp and as accurate as, a Deshaun Watson, if you will.
Are we going to play some DTR stacks? I know we have to talk about QB, but are we going to play some DTR stacks this week? Because if you believe like we do that Denver's defense is that bad, you could talk me into it. I could roll out with an Njoku Cooper maybe, or Njoku plus a running back.
You could talk me into it also. I will say, watching the game last week, they made a concerted effort just to not have their offense lose them the game. Now, it's a different spot here. They were playing Pittsburgh at home. Pittsburgh's got a better D than Denver. I actually think you could make the case for that, for, stacking DTR here, especially because what I talked about at the beginning of the show, there's just less games this week, less opportunity cost all the way around.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. So let's talk about the QBs here. Before we do that, one more ad read to hit on. This is an important one for you guys because we've been talking about the Sims throughout the course of the show. And for Black Friday, the packages are still going on, 50% off for new customers. The deal's ending today, so take advantage of that. That is one of the best deals that Stochastic has had for the Sims since it was launched. Obviously, there's been some discounts recently because people have won the Millie Maker. My pal Short Gamers, always on my Splash Play YouTube channel, has been doing that as well. So go check out the tools. Of course, use the promo code Black Friday, I believe is the promo. Jordan, do you have the graphic pulled up? Because it's not in the ad read. Oh, it's Sims, promo code Sims for Black Friday. There we go. And of course, if you signed up for the Millie promo, don't worry, you'll be emailed a coupon as well to renew your sub for 50% off the new payment. If you're not familiar with the Sims, what they do is create 10,000 lineups. Then those 10,000 lineups compete against each other 40,000 times. And you can either play the Sims straight away, where you can just select the top 150 lineups, or you can go through manually and select each stack that you like. So if you like Cleveland going against Denver, or if you don't, you can certainly go through and pick it one by one. That's what I do for when I'm building my main slate lineups as well. You can also use your custom projections. So make sure to take advantage of that promo code Sims for Black Friday to save 50%. And also for Odd Shopper, 50% off Odd Shopper right now with the promo code Black Friday. All users are available to get that one, and it ends on Monday. So Odd Shopper deals, Black Friday deals with the Sims promo code as well. Take advantage of that at Stochastic, because these are the best deals here, and then they're going to be a lot less coming up in future weeks. So at least now you're getting in, have some time to win some money, hopefully for the end of the NFL season. So go take a look for yourself. And again, just you can take the word of guys like Short Gamer, guys like, of course, a lot of the people behind the scenes. Greg Ehrenberg has been crushing with NBA. There's been a lot of wins going on for the team here, and it's large part because of the tools that are so great. Let's talk about QBs. Of course, QB is going to be the way to complete the stack. Chalk QBs of the week looking like Jalen Hurts, Trevor Lawrence, and perhaps a surprise based on the guys we talked about. I know Matt has mentioned some of the Bucs guys overall. Baker Mayfield, number 3 overall at 10% ownership. Obviously, these are 3 different price points, Matt, and 3 different QBs with Hurts, Lawrence, and Baker. Which would you choose your own adventure with to build around, given that they all kind of represent different ways to attack the slate?
So just talking about winners real quick, Adam shipped 100K last night in NBA. So
I missed that.
Yeah, he took first and second in the big tournament. So congrats to him. Monster night for him. Always like to see it. As far as the QBs go here, again, kind of like AJ Brown. If you're asking me which guy's going to score the most fantasy points, it's Jalen Hurts. I actually like the idea of pivoting to Josh Allen, though, in tournaments there. But the guy that I feel most comfortable with at his price point is going to be Gardner Minshew. He's been pretty good this year. He's got a good matchup here. I've seen the upside. He's 5,100. He allows you to get basically whoever else you want in your lineup, for the most part, at least. So give me Minshew as my favorite guy of these 4.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by Minshew as well. I think Baker is an interesting play because I do think that we could see some pass game production on the Bucs side as well. We didn't really talk as much about the Mike Evans part, even though Matt mentioned the Bucs receivers. But Indianapolis on the year giving up the most explosive pass plays in the league, and that is something as well where I just think the game environment is going to be pretty solid. So I agree with you. I prefer Minshew, but I think Baker for what he represents, where like I want to take Mike Evans in particular along with either of these guys, just because Mike Evans is really the only player in the game that has that 40 fantasy point upside. And if you get that right, and you also get the Colts stack right, or you get the Bucs stack right with it, I think you're going to be in a really good position on the field. So to me, that game's an important one, and I would agree about Minshew, but I will absolutely get some Baker as well. Jalen Hurts, we haven't talked about as much. 8,300. Obviously, we talked about AJ Brown and what that represented. Do think there are some game theory ways to go around and go to Josh Allen, but Hurts going to be the chalk QB. And frankly, I don't want to get buried by Jalen Hurts. So I'll be at least with the field on that one. But how do you feel about Jalen Hurts, and are you willing to pay up for him?
It's almost like for me, there's not much to talk about him here with him, just because he looks so good. I mean, he's arguably the best quarterback for fantasy right now, considering his rushing upside. So anytime you can get to him is not a mistake in my mind, especially if you like some cheaper guys, if you like the Justin Watsons of the world, if you still like Juju, if you like a couple of the cheaper running backs. Hurts is the guy I'd play on a projection level if you're just looking for who's going to score the most fantasy points.
It hurts 10 rushes a game, 3 of which are inside the red zone. Like that is elite level usage that some running backs that people will play on a given week are not getting. So Jalen Hurts, I agree. And again, I think that Josh Allen is an interesting play at 8,100. We have seen the rushing upside be a little bit higher recently since the Bills have desperately needed it and can't just rest on their laurels with a good defense. So I think those 2 guys are definitely the elite pay up options that you can get to. And I'd feel comfortable attacking that game with both guys. And honestly, if you had 10 to 15% of both, I think that's a pretty logical way to play that game. Mahomes is number 5. Are you going to get some Mahomes? Because it is a nice matchup on paper. Again, we've talked about the Vegas players, or the Vegas defense rather, and how we want to attack that with Chiefs players. Mahomes, though, I have a hard time paying the same price tag as Hurts and Allen, just given that lack of rushing upside. But I guess that could make him an interesting tournament play. Are you willing to go to Mahomes at 8,200?
I don't think so. It's Patrick Mahomes, so you can always look back on this slate and say, oh, coming off a bad game, Mahomes did Mahomes type things. But what does that mean from a DFS perspective? He only runs when needed. So yeah, you get a little rushing upside there, but not nearly as much as the Hurtses or Allens of the world. The Raiders defense, we saw them play Miami last week. They've been decent. Now, again, the health of Max Crosby will ultimately determine how good their defense plays today in my eyes, but I don't think Mahomes is a great play considering he's priced right between Hurts and Josh Allen, who I like both of those guys more.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that just jumps out to me is like, well, what if this is the week that he puts up the 35 to 40
Sure.
and it actually has a stack where you're cutting the parlay? Like, if you went to Mahomes with Pacheco, maybe with Watson, with Kelsey, or 2 out of the 3, like that could really be like a nuts kind of core of things. And people might not play it as much because of what we're talking about. Because I think a lot of the field will think the exact same thing we did and go, Hurts runs, Allen runs. Why are we going to Mahomes? So I think it does stand on that level, and actually makes me think too that he might not actually hit that 8% ownership and might be closer to 5, just because like if you're making the choice and you're hand building, especially, I just don't know how anybody would pick Hurts or not pick Hurts or Allen over Mahomes. And that's sometimes how tournaments are won, I guess, is what
I'm
say.
with that. I like that call out a lot. Doesn't mean that I necessarily want to just go jam him in.
Yeah.
My counterpoint to that would be if this were 2 years ago and their offense was clicking on all cylinders and their defense wasn't as good, I think I'd like it more. But their defense has just been playing so well that they don't need their offense to do what they were doing a couple years ago. Doesn't mean they can't do it. I like your point a lot.
Yeah, I would say, if you're going to go Mahomes' way, I'm looking at the heavier stacking of him because he really does have to hit like a 35-point game to have the ceiling outcome. But if ever there were a week to try to consolidate targets for the Chiefs, like this is it, with no McKinnon again, no Tony, no Hardman. Those are 3 guys that are all playing these roles that chip away just enough at everybody else's role. So even if you were playing like a Rashee Rice, like I don't think that Rashee Rice is the best play out of that group, but there are some ways to get there with Mahomes, and I think he's worth the play just because I would have a hard time playing him. Anybody else that you want to kind of put out some feelers for? CJ Stroud, Matthew Stafford, 2 guys that certainly can get there stack wise. We've talked about DTR. DTR is going to be 1.4% owned, and I'll probably play a little bit of DTR just out of curiosity for myself more than anything. But anybody that you want to really say here that's worth the ownership here, given that pretty much everybody who is in those top 3 are like 5% owned or less.
I want to go in a little deeper on DTR because the more we talk about it and mention him, the more I'm intrigued. So I don't know if this makes me like him more or less, but I personally would never play Amari Cooper in this spot. Obviously you've got the home road narratives with him. And then I am of the opinion that Surtain is maybe the best corner in football. And he's one of these guys that shadows 100%. So he's going to be on Amari Cooper. But that just means that this Cleveland stack is so cheap. If you go like DTR, Njoku, Ford, I mean, you're filling your roster out with studs all over. So again, I think it's a low probability of hitting. But if you see DTR use his legs today, that could make him viable by itself. If that's the case, I don't even think you need to pair him with anyone.
Interesting. Yeah, I probably wouldn't play him naked, and I still be willing to take a shot at Cooper just because, alpha receivers against alpha.
It's still Amari Cooper.
Yeah, it's a coin toss sometimes that could go that way. And I know like it'll always stand out to me like Devontae Adams last year. Nobody wanted to play him versus Surtain.
Yeah, you're right.
The hottest streak. And
I remember that.
Him up. Yeah.
That was a late game in Denver. I had a monster afternoon slate that day because I played Devontae Adams and he was like 5% owned in the afternoon slate. So you're bringing back some good memories.
Yeah, I think that's one to me where I'm willing to go to Cleveland stacks. It's really not one that I would say like you need to go to heavy again. 1% owned DTR, an 18-point implied total. But I think really the chat also digging in their heels on the Denver defense makes me think that it's just going to be a play that doesn't occur. And on the slate, that is a play that we can always try to get to. One game we didn't hit on at all, Matt, I just want to quickly get your thoughts. So Tennessee versus Carolina. Tennessee, we know a defense is going to beaten up through the air. We saw, again, Trevor Lawrence had one of the best games of his year. I guess actually unequivocally the best game of his year coming against the Tennessee defense. Obviously, Bryce Young is not Trevor Lawrence or even maybe a league average QB. But is there anybody from this game you're getting at all? Because I think it's the only game we haven't like talked about anybody from really.
We talked about Derrick Henry at the beginning, yes, I just mentioned, but that's it. And I don't love this game. I don't think I could play Bryce Young over DTR. Sure, if I were multi-entering and playing 150, I'd have probably a little bit, but on just on paper, who I like better, it's DTR there. Bryce Young has been the opposite of impressive so far this year. And again, it's a good matchup against Tennessee. I just don't have enough confidence in him on a main slate.
Any defenses for you standing out meaningfully? I'm actually checking my sim to see if I have any that are worth bringing up, but anybody that you want to tout there quickly before we hop off?
I'm a big proponent of spending down on defense just because of how random it is. I don't mind the Houston defense at home because they're the cheapest. The Chiefs defense against Aiden O'Connell. I have no strong defense takes. I think it's just really a crapshoot.
Yeah, getting a lot of Patriots D with the sim, good amount of Chiefs D, and then Broncos D for all the Broncos fans out there. They're coming up a little bit here, about 10% expected ownership from the sim. So I don't know if I'll land on that fully. It does seem like Patriots and Chiefs, it's here above in terms of ownership. We're about a third of the lineups for me. I'm looking like Patriots D, but again, any defense is fine as long as it makes your lineup work. And
it's funny. We've talked about Denver D and about how they stink this year. And I've seen some metrics this week where you've got the Browns. I think it's EPA. I'm not sure though. The Browns in the upper right-hand corner, Denver in the lower left-hand corner in terms of how bad their defense is. But for DFS, turnovers are king. So even if they're not very good, but they're getting the ball and they score on one of those, they're probably going to be optimal. So that's why you can really make a case for any defense.
Yep, I'm with you on that one. So deeper dives coming up next, guys. No Laffy on this one. So guys, make sure you smash the like button now. I know Eytan's going to do a great job with Ben Rasa, of course, but we need to get the likes up because Laffy's out taking care of a new baby. And as Matt and I can both attest, that fucking sucks. It's very, very cumbersome, very tedious, very sickness inducing. So please hit the like button in Laffy's name, of course. Stay tuned for the deeper dive. Follow me at Chris Spags. Follow Matt at Fantasy Tips Matt. And of course, make sure you hit the like button. Get us at least to 250 likes before the deeper dive comes up. And we'd appreciate that a bunch. Shout out to Owner's Box. Check the description down below if you want to get in the mix there. Again, lots of overlay on Owner's Box. They do a great job helping us present this show. So check it out for yourself. Like, obviously, it's a plug. We're here to make money and keep the shows going on. But for you guys as well, there's a really good opportunity to make money on Owner's Box, and certainly one as well where there's not as many sharp players on there. It's always going to be a great thing for you. Appreciate you guys hanging out. Thanks to Matt, as always, for helping me do a good show. Shout out to Jordan Klein behind the scenes as well. And stay tuned. Deeper dive coming up next. Good luck. Bye.
Yo, welcome in. Football Sunday. Hope you are completely over what happened on Thanksgiving and Black Friday, either from a DFS betting standpoint or simply from I can't stand my family any longer than 2 days, or maybe gluttonous as you all are out there. You inhaled a bunch of leftovers Friday, Saturday. Today's kind of the last day for a bunch of things. That's Ben Rasa. I'm Eytan Shander. Lofty is still out. And I already hit the over. Ben, I already hit the over. All right. So I just want to bring you in to what happened here, because I was doing the live before lock on Thanksgiving with Neil, right? Where Lofty would have done that show with Neil. And they were saying about, well, you know, Lofty's going to be back in a week, and don't worry, you don't have to do much more. It's just this, and Ben will have to suffer with you on Sunday. So I said, As somebody else who is currently holding his 5.5-week-old with the second child, kind of like a week or two in advance of I said, there's no freaking way he's going to be back on Tuesday or so. And lo and behold, guess who's filling in with Gajewski on the strategy show Tuesday and Wednesday morning, as you know. Ben, it was the easiest bet I hit in my entire life that he would be back, or he would be out even longer.
Well, yeah, we'll see. We're excited to have Lofty back. He says soon enough, but in the meantime, I'm happy to hop on with you. We'll see. I have shows with him Tuesday as well, but we get a weird...
you do?
Yeah, so maybe you'll be on with me. I don't even know what we'll be doing. How was your Thanksgiving? I love that 3-game slate, one of my favorites, and I like that it equals a 10-game slate today for us, a little more manageable than usual.
It is. Thursday was weird because Thursday, let's group Friday in there as well, right? Because we had a couple of games in here, and I think that ultimately you saw 4 games, you saw 3 favorites hit, 1 dog. So depending on where you were loading up, right? Especially from a DFS standpoint, I think it went pretty according to plan. Like, probably not great for contrarians, probably not great for people that bet dogs and stuff, or, playing guys that were completely out of left field. But I think it sets up an interesting Sunday. As you mentioned, we do have 10 games, but I'm kind of expecting a little more madness than we normally get, because we had so many favorites and so much expected shit go down already.
Yeah, I mean, again, we're at that point in the year. Weather becomes a little more of a factor. Injuries become more of a factor. Nobody's really healthy at this point. So we'll get through it. I mean, like every slate, I think there's some unique angles that we're going to talk about this week that we haven't mentioned on a show just yet. The slate always gives us some different cards to be dealt, but I'm excited to get into it. I'm very interested to see, chat, what you guys are thinking and where we end up on this beautiful Sunday.
All right, so let's look at a couple of things right here. And yes, Lofty, Spud, it was not sickness that Lofty is out. He is just with a new child, if you're new to the world or you haven't heard all of that. So I mentioned today is the last day for 2 things, right? 2 big things today, Ben. You know about one. I don't know if you know about the other. But first and foremost, today is our last day for you to jump in on this amazing offer that we have for the Sims tool. And, we talk about this Black Friday deal and what's going on. We all use it. Somebody just hit another $1 million off these tools. You're going to see these tools throughout the show. I'm not here to sell them to you right over the top right here. Just want to explain that today is really the last day that you can jump in, 50% off your next payment. All right. With that said, today's also the last day, legit last day for leftovers. Like, you can't justify going back to Thanksgiving leftovers on Monday morning following the Thursday of Thanksgiving. You just can't. Sunday, I think you can.
I don't have leftovers because we go out for Thanksgiving. So that's taken care of in the Rasa household. There is no turkey to eat because we don't eat turkey on Thanksgiving. But yeah.
No doggy bags? Wait a second.
No, well, that could happen, but no, there was, I didn't take anything home. So we're good to go. I had to get real food, normal Sunday for me, and I feel good about that.
Good. Okay. Overall, I told you I feel a little crazy. And by the way, speaking of crazy, it would not be a show with you and I if I didn't hit you with the most absurd trend.
Oh, I can't wait.
That you have ever seen or heard before in your life. But overall, just before we get into this Giants and Patriots game, we're going to be here for a little bit, right? Up to 11:30 Eastern time. So we've got some time to breathe and What are you looking forward to the most? If it's a play, like spoil everybody and spoil the show. What are you looking for the most? Is it the Rams? Is it a player on the Colts? Is it an under in the Eagles-Bills game? Like, what's the one thing that you are anticipating the most on this slate today?
So I think for me, the biggest piece of the puzzle, and again, chat, you're going to be along for the ride with us, is what exactly to do in the Colts game. You have a really healthy total. You have two guys that grade out extremely well in the Sims, in Pittman and Jonathan Taylor, and you have every option from going elsewhere, picking one of them, picking both of them without Minshew, or using Minshew in a Colts stack with Taylor, with Pittman, and maybe even someone else. So I think unlocking that has been a decision point for me as I've dove into my lineups this morning, figuring out which of the Colts stars do we want, or do we not even want to go in that direction?
Interesting. I did not think that it would be Colts related here.
I think that's a big piece of this puzzle. I really do.
Yeah, I do. I think you're onto something here. I know you, from just an Odd Shopper Discord standpoint, I know you're in this game, but I'm really curious to see CJ Stroud and this Texans team, and how this offense works against Jacksonville. I won't spoil your ending or result for this game, but that's the one that I think, just to see how long he can keep this up, just to see the dynamic and where the ball's going to, and if they're able to really move and keep up with what we anticipate Jacksonville moving the ball some. All right, so we got a lot. Chat, you know the deal here. Throw whatever you have at us. It doesn't really matter. You tell me if you think, honestly, and Ben, but Ben just admits, of course, that they don't do the leftovers. I can't think of a leftover that would be good enough to keep until Monday that was freshly prepared for Thursday. So if I'm missing something, you let us know and we can debate it. Giants hosting the Patriots. This was at 3.5, dropped to 3, moved back up to 4. Low total. So, this is just a disgusting football game on the surface. Let's be honest. Like, I don't think you're going to find some hidden gem where if you 1,000 licks of the lollipop, you're going to get a nice little treat.
No, it's not good. But, the beautiful thing about DFS is even in an ugly game, there could be a piece or two. Now, I'm not, just looking at any tool you want, from our top stacks tool to ownership. I'm not expecting many people to go to a Giant stack or a Patriot stack, and I'm not either. So it rules out some of that. But I think the interesting wrinkle is, you've got a guy like Ramondre Stevenson, 5,800, can catch the ball, 20 carries in that last game. It could be a competitive game, probably should be a competitive game. Is he pushing for 25 total touches? If he is, that's someone right off the top I'm very comfortable getting to. And then you even have, someone like Douglas on the outside, Saquon on the other side. So I'm not ruling the game out, but I'd be lying to you, Eytan, if I thought this is the game. I think that's a stretch and a half looking at this total.
Yeah, I agree with you. I just don't know where it's coming from. I mean, it could be something like Ramondre. That's the only place, I guess that's probably the better way to qualify it, where you would see somebody be part of a slate breaker, right? Like somebody just added into optimal. It would have to be Stevenson, somebody like that, 3 touchdowns today in short to mid-range yardage, something along those lines. I don't know who else at all is really going to come through like that. So I'm with you, man. I don't think it changes from DK to FanDuel and all where you're finding any value or even leverage here. It's a tough one, man, for this game to find much at all.
Yeah, I mean, again, when you look at it, some of it, of course, like most things that we talk about, price dependent, has to fit in. I don't think that when you're looking at your lineups, you're predominantly starting saying, okay, I want to get exposure to all these guys in this game. But if you landed in that range, I think Stevenson is kind of a separate conversation. He seems like a legitimately good play. But other than that, a guy, like I said, Douglas on the outside, 4,400, saw 9 targets, got 23 targets over the last 3 games. That seems like at least a guy in the conversation. And then Saquon, he's still a really good player. And we saw him, you can just ask Alex himself how useful Saquon is, was a staple of some of his insane scores last week. He exploded against Washington, had a couple touchdowns through the air. I always think you can make a case for Saquon. He's not my favorite running back by a long shot today. But at the same time, I do think you have to at least include him in the conversation if you're talking about tournaments.
So a couple things. Kick's good. Always worry about Zeke vulturing. You definitely have to now factor that in as a possibility with Stevenson. And then just as I was looking at the sims that we ran, I know Jordan ran the 10,000 pool before we go. So you'll see everything across the board, all the examples of what we have simulated here. But the top player ROI, and it makes sense, right? Because of the matchup, even with a guy like Saquon on there, the best ranked just individual commodity we have is the Patriots defense. So I would imagine, though, that this is probably going to be more of a popular play. It's easy to fade the Giants offense, especially with the quarterback issues, Danny DeVito and all that you have there. So the other side of this, though, is could you, how much of a counter here, how much of a pivot do you think you could get away with the Giants defense, right? We just talked about this low total and everything like this. The Patriots are clearly going to be the favorite as far as, if not every defense, most defenses you can choose. And look, we're not going to bog you down with defenses all day today, but this game doesn't really have much else besides it.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, certainly the Patriots grade out well, and I think for good reason. And they will be somewhat popular. I think the Giants will definitely be more contrarian, but at the same time, you're paying a pretty good premium for them. They are the fourth most expensive defense on this slate, and they are still the Giants. So what you really need, I always am a big advocate. It's not just that you're playing a garbage team. You want opportunity. You want opportunities for the ball to be in the air and something weird to happen. So you hope that Mac Jones serves some up and maybe that the Giants can get ahead. Because if they play a conservative game and they keep it on the ground, your chances of getting lucky with a fluke play are diminished. You can still do it, but opportunity is really what you ask for on defense. I get why the Patriots are one of the more popular defenses today.
Yeah. Look, I don't want to go too deep on this thing.
No, there's not that much to say for this game, honestly.
Right. Okay, all good. I'm fine with that. Let's keep it moving here. There might be a couple of these games, just so you know. Like the lowest total on the board we have is 34, but it's not like everything else is 46.5, 48.5, and things along those lines. Carolina's at Tennessee. This may open up a little bit more, maybe, right? You would think than the other game at least. So if you start to look at, I know Adam Thielen, just from a volume guy, is probably going to jump out from Carolina. On the other side of this, you're always going to have a back that you can choose from in Derrick Henry throughout. Maybe that drips a little bit because of cost here, 64 on DK. But where is a good starting spot for you, maybe with one of those two guys?
Yeah, I mean, so this is just another game. You got Titans slight favorite at home. I think that's probably pretty correct, just getting a gauge on what type of script we could see. So I'll start with Carolina. It's not a team that I can't even remember the last time I seriously considered stacking up Bryce Young, to be honest. Just not a team that has a lot. Certainly Adam Thielen's had a good year. I think we know that, but we've also seen, the last month or so, him be in the 7K range and not have really the output that we need. Now, he hasn't scored in that stretch. And if you don't score a touchdown and you're north of 7K, it's almost impossible to really contribute. Still healthy targets, 27 over the last 3 games. So I'll always understand the one-off, but I'll be honest, Adam Thielen is behind a lot of other guys in that same price point for me. We'll talk about some of those Bucs receivers, your boy Devontae Smith for the Eagles. So for Carolina, I don't have a lot to say. And, their backfield is still kind of a weird situation to get to where there's timeshare. And I think that they could be phased out if they're trailing.
Yeah, look, a lot of people getting Derrick Henry on the chat here. And again, we remind you, over 2,100 people watching. The easiest thing you can do right now is hit the thumbs up button and subscribe. The second easiest thing you can do is take advantage of what we have going on with a 50% off Black Friday deal that's still here, but it's ending today with all the stochastic tools that you can bounce. But look, Henry in all my lines, King Henry to feast, atone, fellas, Thielen and Henry. Now, Thielen, I get it from that standpoint, but I wonder just how popular Henry is going to be. Again, we talked about that with the Patriots defense. You know, if you're looking at cost to popularity, there really isn't much else you can move from to this game. You're just going to have to look at another back elsewhere. I don't even know how deep we can get into this game. Like, this is the deep dive. And, well, DeAndre Hopkins. I think DeAndre Hopkins has a little value here. 6,100. It's going to be tough knowing that the quarterback situation is so in flux there. I probably won't stack much at all of Levis and Hopkins, but that's an option.
So I definitely think similar to the last game we talked about, where if you ask me, I think New England is much more interesting in terms of playable options. For this game, I think Tennessee has at least some reasonable targets that are worth discussing. I don't see a lot on Carolina. So let's get to it with Tennessee. Chad already mentioned it. You got King Henry. Now, it's not, I don't know how you spin it anything other than it's been just a really bad year if you've been rostering him. It's just not happening. He was never a target share kind of guy. He was getting there on volume. He's not scoring. He's not flirting with 100 yards. And he's not, more importantly, he's not flirting with like 30 carries anymore either. All of those are really concerning. I still think in the right game scripts, Derrick Henry can be an asset, and he's 6,400. Reasonably priced kind of across the industry from Owner's Box, FanDuel, DraftKings. I have no issue with getting to him. And then on the flip side, on the outside, you do have Hopkins, who's still an alpha. Targets, they fluctuate, but we've seen Levis be willing to take shots with him. I think if I had to pick one, I would go Henry personally. Not sure I'm getting to either of them in any type of stacking opportunities. But for me, Tennessee does provide some opportunity in the mid-range, particularly with Henry at the running back position.
Not a great simulated ROI that we have going through, but the Titans defense might pop up as well, just how bad their opponent is and just how much Bryce Young struggles with just basic throws in the NFL. It's an easy fade, I would think, from an offense standpoint. Again, popularity, cost, all of that coming back. Our Sims tool does not love it from an sim, at least ROI, but at the same time, it's going to be an option by all means. That's pretty much it. Now you start to scrape. Like, I don't, on a 10-game slate, I don't know how much you're going to get to Will Levis. And I'm not even like, right? Like, I don't know how much you have to get to Will Levis. Carolina's defense good enough to where you could probably stay away from him.
It's a situation, again, I think it all has to flow within the slate. So I didn't find myself starved for value when I built. I didn't find myself saying, oh man, I really need to find like a really cheap quarterback. And even if I did, Baker, Minshew, there are other guys in the same range that I was more than happy to get to over Levis. So I'm just not sure what exactly the point of doing that is. Now, if you want to tell me, okay, they grade out okay, I like Hopkins, I'm going to go to like, a QB +2 with Chig, do something unique like that. Yeah, I get it. But for me, there are other teams that grade out better. And just looking at our top stacks tool, again, one of the many things we've got, Tennessee doesn't grade out particularly well as a stack. They're kind of indifferent. And I think that's how I'm treating them as well.
Yeah, man, I'm with you on that, especially looking at where we have this projected. And granted, things change throughout the morning as we'll bounce around, but Tennessee is not going to magically move up to a top-rated stack for us.
I don't think so.
90 minutes. No. Nobody has to worry about missing them by any means. And look, Carolina as well. They're right there in that middle where there isn't enough talent, I think, to justify this stretch. So we can move on, right? You're okay with that?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay. It's just a lot of Derrick Henry love. Goody's right. It's a gross slate. Like this for 10 games. This is not an appealing slate. It's not awful where you have to close your eyes and hold your nose for, to take that cough syrup medicine when you were 8 or 9 years old, but it's not great. You have a couple of games, but everybody knows about those couple of games. So maybe you'll find some value. Like, would it shock you if a dumpster diver lineup won you some money today? Probably not.
I like slates like this. I really do. So I think this is a good one to really attack. Some ugly totals. You just mentioned, we just rattled off 2 games and combined the total was 70.
Terrible.
Yeah, it's bad.
TCU hit that alone and they lost.
They did. That was that was a game. Yeah, Oklahoma just hung a 70 spot. So that's
about
college football for you.
Well, seriously, how about the total extremes that you just saw in college football, where Oklahoma TCU put up 1,000 points and Iowa and Nebraska struggled their way to 20?
Yeah, that's the world we live in. Luckily for us, NFL, a little more condensed. You're not gonna see 60-point totals. You're not gonna see 20-point totals. We're living in the 30s and the mid 40s here.
If you ever see a 60-point total, bet under that. As we go to Jacksonville and Houston, we'll have a little bit more, thank goodness, to talk about this. Troy King, T King mode on the chat. This is an interesting question. It centers around the sim tool. Again, you're getting 50% off. Today is the last day to jump in. Why you wouldn't do that? We all use it. I've even shown screen caps and stuff on Twitter of some smash ROI days for me. So if I'm able to slide in, if the guy that's on the Odd Shopper solo channel can come in here and hit some ROIs, imagine what Ben and Neil and Lofty and everybody, think about you. You're right there. You're better than me all out there. So this is an interesting question. The lowest simulated ROI that is still considered optimal or worthy of picking on the Sims tool. Because again, we talked about a couple of these plays in that Tennessee-Carolina game that are going to be negative simulated ROI, but that doesn't necessarily take them out of contention either.
No, not at all. And I think really, I don't have any like hard and fast rules because I think every slate is unique. What I really want to look for is just paths to victory. And, you certainly don't want to just be, oh, this guy's got a negative 80% ROI. Let me jam him in. No, that seems short-sighted, kind of on a, overall mindset. But what I really look to do is get a stack, really look at, okay, make sure my contest structure is correct. The sim RI looks good. And then once you build around that, you may have to take a leverage play, a boom bust play, and tweak the lineup a little. So I'm very comfortable still getting to a player that maybe doesn't jump off the page, but I say, okay, I love the rest of my lineup. I think this guy has paths to victory. And if I roll the dice and get lucky with him, the rest of his lineup is perfectly secure. So don't be afraid to embrace that up to an extent.
So I know the answer to this question, but who has the better day today, Trevor Lawrence or CJ Stroud? And when I say I know the answer, I don't have the script. Like I didn't look at the script ahead of time before. I know your answer. That's all. I know your answer.
I was going to say, if you know that answer, I hope you can tell me because I bet the Jaguars. So it better be Trevor Lawrence. I
lost 3 units on Ohio State yesterday. I don't know anything. Okay. I have the script I have was changed, Ben.
Hopefully CJ Stroud is a little upset about that and maybe not on his A game because I need Trevor Lawrence to really, really get it done. Now, last 2 weeks ago, let's step back. A couple weeks ago, I went to a very contrarian Trevor Lawrence and I was absolutely and rightfully so punished. San Francisco is unbelievable. They put up a whopping 3 points. Last week, Trevor Lawrence bounced back in a huge way. I was a little frustrated because I thought he actually could have had a bigger stack day. He had 2 rushing touchdowns in that game, and it really did hurt everyone basically besides Ridley, who still had a monster game. So I look at Trevor Lawrence here, though, against Houston. Obviously, there will be no weather in that stadium, a very competitive script. I think he grades out perfectly. The Sims are getting to him. You have multiple stacking options. This is a first team we've talked about where I feel very excited about targeting them. Jacksonville is a core play for me. A lot of stackability with them.
Yeah, man. I don't know where this game goes, right? Because Stroud has just been so difficult to bet against, to counter. And we have, as you mentioned, both of these teams are right there in our top 5 for top stack. Rams, Chiefs, Eagles, and then it's Houston, Jacksonville. And there's not much difference between these two outside of some cost and some advantage on value there. So they're pretty equally rated, I would imagine. I think, though, to your point, the problem now lies in Houston stopping Jacksonville. Like, I have less confidence in Houston stopping Jacksonville than I do in Jacksonville stopping Houston. And that's crazy because I think that counters the logic of what CJ Stroud has been able to do in the league so far. But this is I think this is going to be a really difficult matchup just overall for them. And that's why I'm with you on that. You look at where 6 of their last 8, this is a division now for Jacksonville where they kind of have to close the door. Houston is definitely right, trying to sweep. I don't know. It's tough, man. It's tough for me to think that Houston wins this game. And then it comes into the specifics of, maybe Stroud is not necessarily a fade, but you're not getting to him in that stack nearly as much.
I mean,
unless you see a shootout and I'm missing it.
No, well, listen, the books, obviously it's got an extremely healthy total. It's going to be a very popular game, and there's nothing that you can take away from CJ Stroud. Has just been unbelievable. Now he's starting to make, and it's funny and ironic in some ways, I don't think the interceptions really hurt his DFS upside. In some ways, it might help the game scripts. He had 3 interceptions against Arizona. He's got 5 on the year. That was very atypical. So I'm comfortable with either side of the game. I think that things that we really need to know is, okay, we've got Zay Jones sporting a Q tag. We have to keep an eye on that. If he misses, I think it just further solidifies Kirk, Ridley, Ingram. I'm not looking to do anything different. If he plays, I still don't think those guys are out of play by any stretch. It's just maybe a little more variance within the stack. And then to me, and this, Eytan, I'm interested to hear your insight here. The one guy I don't know what to do, and the Sim's not getting a lot of them either. Eytan is just there. He's a talented player. He obviously can catch the ball, but we saw at times, particularly last week, he had 14 carries and 3 targets. He really wasn't a factor in that game, and he can be phased out even in a good game script. Tennessee and Jacksonville last week, Jacksonville won 34-14, and Eytan really wasn't anything that you wanted in DFS. So he is the wild card within the Jaguar stacks to me.
I think he's going to be tough. We'll talk about the other side here, but I'd actually rather get to Singletary in this game multiple times over than Eytan in the sense of matchup and just availability. But just looking at this side, I don't know. We have Ingram right there as the highest projected Jag. We also have Trevor Lawrence, a little bit lower. You're going to see for some top ROI in our Sims tool. You're going to see guys like Ridley and Kirk, as you mentioned. So the tool would indicate, like the total, that this is going to be some higher scoring and that if the majority of scoring is going to come in the air. And then I go back to your point, which is, well, first off, I don't see Jacksonville blowing out Houston. And even if they did blow out Houston, we've seen a game script already negate Eytan in an opportunity to just feed him in order to close it out. So I think, look, it's going to be a higher scoring game, and Houston is going to be able to run on Jacksonville. If I were to choose a back from this game, and maybe we can look at Houston from that, I'm going Singletary. And I think that's just because of Jacksonville, their inability to stop the run overall, at least. And that's going to be, that probably feeds into the total here. 26th in yards. They're also terrible against the pass, too. So I think you can get to them both on the ground and in the air, but Singletary would be the guy that I'd look at.
So the thing
26 versus the rush overall.
I worry just about the volume situation. It looks like Pierce is going to return. Now, will he return in the same role? I have no idea. I think that's just an unknown on the Houston side. Probably shades me a little more to maybe like a Nico Collins. Obviously, Tank Dell has been, just stupid good. It wasn't that long ago where he was the flat min, 3,200, sub 4K, and now he's already pushing 7,000, and rightfully so. So I get it. Probably more of a bring back for me just because I'm heavier on the Jaguar side. But I think you have seen time and time again, Houston really represent themselves well. And I think the Sims are displaying that for us. You've got 3 pass catchers from Dell to Collins to Woods with no Brown, and then CJ Stroud that brings it all together.
So here's the thing. Pierce coming back, but it's Doug Peterson is not an idiot, right? Like he's not Dennis Allen or one of these guys that just doesn't Josh McDaniels or so. Singletary has ran the ball fantastic so far. And if you look at this, he was averaging over 4.5 yards per carry against the Jags in their first game. Point being is that even if there's a game plan coming into this, Ben, where you're bringing Pierce back and that might on paper limit what you're getting from Singletary, he's already, Singletary, proven that he can be productive in the opportunities, and he's proven he's been productive against Jacksonville. All I'm saying is that I would look at Singletary not so much concerned that Pierce is back, but more so that he's already proven, A, he's been able to carry the load, and B, he should have success as he already did against Jacksonville. Meaning, maybe that's a hot hand scenario. Like if Singletary is pounding the ball, why would you just force Pierce there as opposed to spelling Singletary and still giving Pierce some looks. I'm not saying Pierce ain't going to touch the ball. I just want to clarify that.
Yeah. And listen, again, those are things that I think those are decision points that you kind of have to make depending on your risk tolerance and things like that. For me, just again, for this game, I think I know kind of the mindset that I want to take, which is I think the Jaguars are going to play well. I think Lawrence and the pass catchers have the advantage over the Houston secondary. And if that domino kind of falls into place, what does the game look like? Who are the bringbacks? And kind of how can we exploit that situation? So this is a good one. You're going to see a lot of ownership in this game, and I think that that's warranted.
It wouldn't shock me. I don't want to beat a dead horse here because maybe this opens up stuff for Pierce too, but it wouldn't shock me if Houston got a lot of productivity just on the ground as a whole. The more I'm looking at this, I saw somebody tweeted this from Lock and Fora. Jags D 31st in the NFL with a fullback on the field, 29th versus opponents under center. That's a Rasa stat right there.
That sounds very shady. I don't even know what to do with that. That's above my pay grade. What I do know, Trevor Lawrence and these pass catchers really should be able to get it done here. To me, Eytan is the most difficult piece of this entire game. I could make a case for him in tournaments, but I also think that he is behind most of the other Jags. Skill position and opportunity cost to me at running back is a little deeper today.
Okay. Yeah, and it sounds like you don't want to get much to Eytan, just to kind of put a bow in this game.
I think that he's more on the outside looking in, maybe a dart throw here and there, maybe an attachment to it. If I had a million Lawrence stacks, he would factor into them. But the ideal way for me to build my Jag stacks is Lawrence, one of the pass catchers, and then either a second pass catcher or Ingram, who obviously is a pass catcher, but he fills a different position. So QB +2, and then deciding, do I want to bring back with either Collins or Dell?
Okay. All good, brother. We'll keep it moving here. And I think you have some great options. I know. That's why I was trying to belabor this, if you will, prolong the Jacksonville-Houston conversation. And, this game, again, Pittsburgh laying 2. The total is at 36. You have a backup. I will just caution you out there. There's a major difference in the NFL where you have a week's worth of practice with a backup quarterback versus a guy just thrown into the game because the starter has a wrist, knee, head, or what have you injury. So with that said, I know that this is going to take an effect, probably dampen people's hopes and spirits on Jamar Chase and others, but clearly the books are not counting out the Cincinnati Bengals with Pittsburgh, as good as their record is, even though they've been outgained in every single football game this year. As good as they are, they're only laying 2 on the road against a division rival. So let's just talk about, let's get the obvious out of the way. I know we normally talk about Pittsburgh. Is Jordan Klein going to get upset at me if we talk about Cincinnati first? Does he have all the graphics lined up? And he's saying no, and he's giving me the thumbs up. But Ben, I don't trust him. He's going to bring this back up on Slack in the community chat and dime me out to Lofty.
Possible, but no, he looks focused this morning. I think he's ready. So I think you can take that.
For him.
I think you take it 2 different ways with Cincinnati. So I agree with that. There is a difference, but there's also a difference on the other side that the defense gets to actually get some tape, prepare. Yep. They're not if the quarterback goes down in the middle of the game, these guys are like, wait, who is this other guy? Like, I'm not sure they're fully equipped. Now, the problem with this game, of course, is it's just a disgusting environment and a disgusting total, but you have straight playmakers. And this is where there's always that balance of risk reward. Jamar Chase, elite player. Yep. I cannot remember the last time we have him right now. And again, things can get updated and changed, but it's not going to get changed drastically. We have him updated 4% ownership right now for a guy like Jamar Chase, an elite playmaker. And I get it. It's not the best situation in the world, but man, you don't need that much to get over. And then you've got guys like Mixon, like Irwin, some of these secondary players, because Higgins is out. I'm not saying I'm getting to a lot of Cincinnati, but I am saying that you at least have to consider these guys as one-offs, even in a very bad game environment, just because of the talent of a guy like Chase.
Look, I think Jamar Chase and Trenton Irwin are the 2 guys that I would look to target. I already bet them. I put it out there on the Odd Shopper Discord. We got 50% off our Black Friday deal on the Odd Shopper channel where you can I mean, Ben, it's insane. Like, I don't want to go off on a tangent, but we have taken a tool and we've made it like a city, like a metropolis. We've got expert picks, we've got parlay builders, all this other stuff, and the Discord. And I already have a same game TD parlay in this one. I'll save the Pittsburgh Steeler guy for you coming up. He's more of an obvious name, but this just seems like an opportunity where the defense, Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh, knows they've got Jake Browning to defend. They know that Cincinnati has no choice but to pound the football in creative ways to Jamar Chase. I don't trust that Tyler Boyd is just going to be standing there wide open. There's going to be some spots, I think, for a guy like Trenton Irwin if he can take advantage of it. And I would be interested in that. Maybe I have a little double stack there. One lineup with Jake Browning, Jamar Chase, and Trenton Irwin.
Well, that's dangerously aggressive. That's Millie Maker type mentality. It is. Listen, there's obviously bad factors in this game. I don't think you can discount that. It's not ideal. It's outside. It's not ideal weather. It's a really good defense. It's a divisional matchup. And yes, Browning might be serviceable, but I'm assuming their plan is don't lose the game. Don't lose the game. Don't be making crazy plays. Quick, easy. And that's where I think the real path to any Cincinnati player's got to be volume. It has to be volume. Like if you're playing someone like Chase, you better hope that he gets 6 to 10 bubble screens and he can break one of them. I think that's really what you're banking for. Same with a guy like Mixon on the ground. So it's not a great environment for the game, but I think everything that you say about Cincinnati, we could honestly say about Pittsburgh and have it be somewhat valid in terms of it's just not a good environment for them either. And I think the board reflects that. This is almost a pick 'em. It's a close competitive spread.
Yeah, I mean, look, I have Cincinnati. I'll be completely honest with you guys.
I didn't bet the game,
I'm on.
So.
Yeah, you didn't bet this?
No.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all. I just took Cincinnati on the money line here. This is a game where, again, the Joe Burrow's absence did not move this significantly enough for me to think the world is going to come to an end. Clearly, there isn't enough confidence on Pittsburgh. So I think Cincinnati, again, we just saw this with Cleveland. You give a team, so long as the guy's not Tim Boyle and the coaching staff is the New York Jets. Well, yeah, okay, but at least give me this. Give me this. What's going on the Cincinnati Bengals sideline from an offensive standpoint, coaching and game planning is far better than anything the New York Jets could ever devise in a million years.
Yeah, I'm out of ways to defend the Jets. I want to. I've tried. It's hard right now. But again, 10-game slate. I don't see many reasons why you want to get funneled into this game in a large iteration on either side. And I think that the tools, the sims, the top stack tool, everything that I think makes the stochastic process really work is kind of confirming that. I didn't see anything that jumped off the page when I looked at this game.
Neither did I, my friend, except for possible. Well, again, from a betting standpoint. But again, Trent, I'm going to stand by Trenton Irwin. Do you have anything that you want to mention on Pittsburgh? I think the conversation or the comparison, if you will, is totally apt there. You're dealing with Browning and Pickett. There shouldn't be a major significance as far as difference is concerned by any means. So, outside of that, are you getting to much Pittsburgh as far as a stack is even concerned? You told us the tool is saying no. There's no value on the top stacks. There's not really much on our sims. Maybe as we've seen Najee Harris kind of displaced as the top back, you can get to little Jalen. That's the guy that I hit an anytime TD with, Jalen and Irwin. That's really it, though, right?
I think that's got to be probably, the focal point. I'm not really interested in the pass catchers. We saw Freiermuth come back, was a non-factor. Pickens and Deontay Johnson. Jalen Warren was outstanding. And it wasn't just outstanding. He was outstanding against the Browns defense on the road. Now, when you have a 74-yard run, things look quite good. You take that out, and the output is much more reasonable. We know he can catch the ball. We know he's got some, obviously, abilities. I think he's in the conversation for being playable, but I would rather play a guy like Ramondre. If Warren gets a lot more work and he starts to really consolidate over Najee, then yes, I get it more and more. I don't know if that's 100% a given just yet. So Jalen Warren in the conversation, but Jalen Warren is still competing with a lot of other mid-range backs on this slate.
46 degrees, periods of rain, winds 10 to 15 miles per hour. This is not a situation that would warrant either head coach. And I'm going to give Mike Tomlin the benefit of the doubt. Clearly, Zach on the other side, too. Neither one of these head coaches are dumb enough to go into this game asking their respective quarterbacks to win the game. That's what right. That's where we can kind of, I mean, this game is atrocious. Let's be honest. Okay. You have to sit down and watch every single second of a football game. All right. You have three options, and chat. Okay. You let me know. You can answer for Ben or disagree with Ben, what have you. You have three options. You have to watch every single second of the game. New England at New York, Pittsburgh at Cincinnati, Nebraska at Iowa. And you have the benefit of already knowing what Nebraska at Iowa looks like. All right. So I'm giving you a bone right here with that. Those three. Well,
I already watched one of those in full, so I guess that doesn't count. I like this game. I think this is going to be a fantastic watch. Just not sure it has a ton of DFS value for us here. Again, Warren, I get it. I'm not going to try to hero call some type of stack in this game. We still have 6 games to go, and some of them really have some nice quarterback stacks that I think we're both going to be interested in.
All right, so we'll move on here. I do want to remind everybody, yes, we'll keep telling you about this Black Friday deal. It's awesome. But Owner's Box, I know, Ben, and I got to shout Greg out because I didn't realize when this first became a thing right away with us that this was so beatable, that the overlay, that the ability to step in and rock out on Owner's Box. We have projections, so we're constantly aiding and educating you that you can jump in. So your first deposit, minimum $10, a bonus up to $250, right? So you put $250 in, we'll match that there. Maximum up to $500. Pardon me. Sorry, that was the example, was the $250, but it's up to $500. And you get one $5 Lightning lineup entry, an additional $5 contest ticket. That's cool because Owner's Box is just showing you what's going on. It's one thing to give you money back, but it's also giving you little samples of what to jump in. And again, you know, 18 or older, you have to be in to jump in and play this. But I'm just amazed once I started playing how easy it is with our projections to beat it.
Plus, to anything, we've got tools to support you. You're not just sign up and then good luck. We'll see you when we see you. These tools are catered for this site specifically, and there are edges to be had. There's overlay to be had. So it's just another way. I say it every time. Won't waste any more time here. It's just part of my process. It's not, I didn't move all my action there, and I'm not going to. But I absolutely believe that you are building a bankroll when you look to these type of sites, and when we have tools to really beat the market, when we have tools to exploit the edges on Owner's Box. You've got a lobby. Look at these tournaments. They're not full, and I don't know if they're going to get there. And that is just dead money that we get to take advantage of.
By the way, we call that the pump and dump. So if see Jordan's eyes are the exact same. You
watching Wolf of Wall Street over here? What the hell's going on?
No. I used that on the show with Neil and Jacob. And both of them gave me the same look as Thomas. I'm looking at Tom Kennedy underneath there with Jordan, as Jordan just did. And I had to clarify. So people in the chat were like, thank you for clarifying what a pump and dump. No. What Ben described, this is the same thing for sports books. This is the same thing for our Odd Shopper tool, for the stochastic tools. The pump and dump is just to get you in there, and then you never hear from us again. You know, Greg showing you all these picket slips, and then you can't access Greg once you're in here. I was told Greg Ehrenberg would be here, and he's a ghost. That's the pump and dump. That's what I'm saying. Like we don't pump and dump. No.
And that's the beauty of it. Again, it's just really, really cool stuff. Check it out and see for yourself. That's what I always say. It may not be for you, but it may be a really nice boost to your bankroll.
All right. I just either made or ruined somebody's day out there with that. Bucks getting 3 on the road at Indy. This is it. This is the one you said when I asked you at the start of the show, what's the one thing you're looking forward to? You said, nah, it's not Jacksonville. It's not Cleveland. It's not the Rams. It's not even the Chiefs bouncing back or the Eagles losing. It's Indianapolis. So let's get Tampa out of the way here. We'll get back to a somewhat of a semblance of what we're doing here. But just looking at Tampa Bay and start there, right? This has been an offense, at least and especially with Baker Mayfield, it's not like they've been absent all year. The record and the performance from the team, I think, has been has been problematic and questionable, what have you. But, the obvious place I think we should start is Mike Evans, Baker Mayfield, that stack. Although I may add, Trey Palmer is living large on our projections for the Sims tool right now as a strong play to get to with Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, so this is a game, again, I know at the beginning I mentioned Jonathan Taylor and Pittman, and we'll get to them, but let's not discount Tampa. This is a team that I think deserves our attention on this slate. They're a slight road dog, no problem there. They grade out very nicely as a potential stack today. You've got Baker with several guys that certainly factor in. I think Mike Evans is probably the most interesting. We've seen the targets, 22 targets in the last 2 games. We know he's a red zone threat. He scored in 4 of 5 games. 7,400 is a pretty reasonable price point, but I don't think that he is going to be stifled by this Colts secondary. And then you've got Godwin, who is just kind of there. I'm indifferent to it. I think that he's fine as a Baker attachment. I'll give a shout out to Trey Palmer, starting to get some more work. He had 6 targets in his last game against San Francisco. That was the most, in a couple weeks for him. It's a pay down option. He's competing with Justin Watson. He's competing with Irwin, some of those type of guys at a dirt cheap price tag. Cade Otton is another guy that you could pair with Baker. So you have numerous options for the type of passing game. And then you've got Rachaad White, which is a really tricky situation. He's sporting a Q tag. It looks like he's going to be good to go. I just don't know what to make of it. He's been living on volume. He had 20 carries in 2 out of the last 3 games. He had 7 targets in the last game. We need that type of volume for him at 6,100. So I think that's probably the riskiest because we just don't know. But I'm interested in some Tampa stacks as well, because I think this is just a very good game to target.
He's the 5th highest projected owned player on the slate, Rachaad White. Does that do anything or change your opinion, knowing that you're probably not going to get a ton of leverage with him, especially knowing that there's risk associated with anybody with a Q tag?
Yeah, I think it just solidifies for me that I'm willing to roll the dice there and say, okay, listen, if Rachaad White is completely healthy or he's able to gut through it with his normal workload, I'm going to have to live with it. I hope he doesn't go crazy, because for me, there are other, we'll talk about the Chiefs and some of these other teams with backs in that same range that I do prefer over Rachaad White today.
Toma on the super chat. Appreciate that big time. Single entry, T. Dell, Pittman, or both?
Certainly could go both if you want. If I was only playing one, I would give the nod to Pittman, but you've got 2 really good players flirting, just sub 7K. Can't go wrong there.
Is there really, like think about this. I know you didn't have any leftovers, but there really isn't anything that you could, like, if you were having people over for dinner on Monday night, or no. If you went to somebody's house for dinner on Monday night and they served you Thanksgiving leftovers, what would you say?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would be a little confused if I went anywhere and they served me leftovers. Like, that doesn't seem like an appropriate, like, come on over, we've got some food that we already half ate. That doesn't really happen in my ecosystem. That's not going to happen. But yeah, I would be disturbed whether that's Thanksgiving or just a normal day. That's not going to fly.
Shout out to Hard Jimbo, who pumped and dumped this morning. So love that. Love to see it. If you're a pump and dumper this morning, we love it. On a Sunday before the football games begin, then you are out there, and we love that. Yeah, Obi-Wan, like, first off, the day after Thanksgiving, are people not celebrating? And I don't mean like celebrating in the sense of like, what are you thankful for? I mean just eating. Are people not celebrating this holiday to where they have a shit ton of food left over after Thursday and eating on Friday? Like, is that not happening? Let's just start there. Are people not eating leftovers on Friday in this chat? We have nearly 3,000 people. I can't be the only one who's eating leftovers on Black Friday, right?
Probably not. I'm not doing that, but I respect it. I think you're at the limit though. Sunday's back to business for me. Let's get to it and then get back in our laser focus with food on Sundays here.
Well, okay. Laser focus. That's all.
That's what I'm trying.
And on the other side here, we've got Pittman and Taylor, who are going to be super heavy right now, and understandably so. So those are going to be the spots really to start here. And then with Pittman, of course, comes QB play with Minshew, but I think it's also, and again, we've got a fantastic simulated ROI for Minshew right there at the top. This speaks to where you were looking at the Colts at the stop. But Josh Downs, I know that the slow movement back in, a couple of games ago, now Downs back 4,800. He's popping a lot for us.
So that's really the interesting thing, because this is where it's almost like I don't even have a great analogy for it, but with Minshew, if all these other pieces grade out so highly, by extension, a cheap quarterback has to be pretty effective. Yes, Jonathan Taylor, maybe he isolates all on the ground, and it looks like, you never say never, but it looks like he's taking control. Zach Moss, non-factor in the last game. It looks like Jonathan Taylor is now back to business there. But if Jonathan Taylor gets some work in the targets, if Michael Pittman has a good game, Minshew is starting to get propped up, and now we get to Downs at a different price point. If he sees some targets, now we're really talking about it. So I absolutely get it. We have seen Tampa Bay be gutted by passing attacks. They have done absolutely nothing to stop that. I think we all remember what Houston did to them pretty damn recently. I get it. Indoors, Colts. This is a team not to mess around with today. I think that the tougher question is it Jonathan Taylor? Is it Pittman? Is it both? Is it an onslaught? I don't have a great answer for that. I think that looking at the Sims, I'm getting kind of a lot of different iterations from that. I have Minshew with Taylor and Pittman grading out on some of the stacks that they're recommending. I also see the case for one-offs around other stacks. So you're not going to go wrong to me with targeting the Colts today. And I think that you will certainly see crazy ownership on them. They're grading out as two of the highest owned players on the entire slate.
Yeah, how much do you find yourself, and maybe this is a 1-2% scenario here, depending on your builds, but if you are looking at a two-man stack, it's going to be Pittman and Downs. You're going to add, obviously, Minshew with a quarterback, but but Taylor is really difficult to just ignore. Do you find yourself just getting to a two-man stack with Taylor on top of that, knowing that this game could easily be 42-10 Colts?
I think that it's definitely in play to put Taylor into your stacks. And yes, you want target volume, but you also could just see full volume from the team where Minshew has a couple passing touchdowns and Jonathan Taylor has a couple rushing touchdowns, and it works together without actually correlating. So this is a situation. I think you're going to see a lot of people do that. I also bet you will see people do Jonathan Taylor and Pittman without Minshew. And just have, I'm going to take all the Colts offense. I'll go to my quarterback somewhere else. I absolutely think that the Colts are a team that has a lot of opportunities today, and one that you want some Colts in your lineups.
I saw Andrew Johnson mention Granson being so cheap there as well. Kylan Granson is not popping up a ton from a positive simulated ROI. But again, we had that question earlier. Doesn't mean that at 2,600, he could be a guy that you ignore. The question is just how much of a share with anyone else at that spot, and how much is Minshew really going to be targeting the tight end position versus just having opportunities with Pittman and Downs specifically. So, and even Pierce, who's kind of just hovering there as well. So it's tough, but at the same time, I think a double stack is definitely worth a look at the very least. And you know what? Not even from a stack standpoint, but just what you said, as far as, not having Minshew. Nicholas Lynn, it could be 42-10 either way. I get it. It's a Sunday in the NFL, so crazier shit has happened. But I would think that if I were to put a percentage on that, which team has the better chance of winning 42-10 today, I would say 73.8% would be the Colts winning in that fashion.
Right,
I don't see the Colts. You think it's more 50-50?
No, I mean, listen, I always just use betting as my barometer. Obviously, the Colts are slight favorite, and I think that that's warranted. Game seems like a pretty reasonable range of outcomes on either side. So
yeah,
I agree. We did have one interesting question before we move on. Tyler saying, will you play devil's advocate, go with no Colts? I always think you can do that when you have a lot of ownership. It's just a contrarian way to build. So I would not fault that. I would probably fade the entire game and just hope, nothing happens. Or you could go Bucks onslaught and think that maybe they smoke them. it's unlikely, but also the leverage you would get if both Taylor and Pittman don't get there today, I think absolutely in large field tournaments makes a case for that.
Atlanta hosting New Orleans. There's a 42-point total as we see Dennis Allen and, I know Carr with this situation at quarterback, but, these are just guys that I don't want any part of as far as favorites on the road. This is another gross game on the surface, but that doesn't mean it's not, stay away from a DFS standpoint. What are you doing with the Saints right now? Looking at where we have them, they do have some value. It's not right there at the top, but it's upper echelon, if you will, maybe top mid. New Orleans is a top mid stack today, if you kind of look at that. I don't know how much you're getting to this game or even with the Saints specifically.
The Saints are always a tricky team because they have stuff that normal teams don't have, like Taysom Hill that can just cannibalize his own offense. He takes a couple goal line works, he does something like that, and you're really strained if you have Kamara, Olave, guys like that. Having said that, I do think pieces of the puzzle could come from this game. I'm not looking to stack it, but a guy like Chris Olave, mid-range price tag, still seeing a ton of targets. I mean, he's had 8 or more targets in 5 straight games. So he's still going to get work out there. I don't fear really anything about Atlanta. They're just a team. Obviously, another game you don't have to worry about weather, which helps. So for me, Olave's in play. And then, we already talked extensively about Jonathan Taylor. We talked about Ramondre. We're going to talk about Pacheco. We talked about a lot of mid-range backs. Kamara is priced up, and in a way, I'm interested to see how many people just forego really targeting him today, and it's still Alvin Kamara. We have him hovering around 10% right now. I think that's a pretty reasonable ownership tag on a guy like Kamara. So if you want it to be different, I always think you can make a case for a guy that could receive 10 targets on a whim. Not my favorite play in the world, but those two big Saints are the ways that I'm looking to target them.
I was looking this morning, Odd Shopper loved going over 4.5 receptions for Alvin Kamara. I was looking at that in one of the videos that I was doing where I was showing the parlay builder, and Kamara just popped right up there as one of the top plus EV bets. So yes, absolutely. We love that.
Yeah,
I'm with you. And of course the cost associated with him is going to be the risk there. So, if you look at that from the standpoint of New Orleans, the other side of this would just be what you do with Atlanta. I've seen a lot of Desmond Ridder love, which, I don't necessarily know if I'm on board with by all means. Bijan, you would think at some point this idiot coach is going to stop apologizing for the lack of productivity and usage of Bijan and just start using him and ensuring that he can get a touchdown. Today would probably be the day, but again, you can't put anything really on the back of Arthur Smith until he proves it. I don't know. I mean, Drake London seems to be the best option from our tool standpoint, from the sim standpoint, but again, it's a matter of where your comfort level is.
Yeah, Atlanta's been a frustrating team all year. They're playing quarterback roulette at times. Bijan at times has been a non-factor. Kyle Pitts at times has been a non-factor. Jonnu Smith at times has been a factor. I'll keep it pretty simple. Drake London, flat 5. I get it. I think he makes sense. Talented player on the outside. I would say that Ridder is probably the guy that I would want under center for him. And then Bijan, we at least saw 22 carries in that last game. I would love the targets to get to a better level at times, but this is a talented player. The price is right. But I don't think we can ever say you can confidently deploy him because I don't trust their coaching staff. And I think the volume is very tenuous within the game. So Bijan's in play for me, but if you see he has 9 carries and 3 targets, I think that is something you're going to have to live with, and it would be quite unfortunate once again.
I think, if you can get plus money for him, which I think you can, to score a touchdown, still like that 110, 115 range, probably devalued a little bit. That's where I would look to play him more than
it's frustrating
than jamming him in. Yeah. But you could see a game in which he doesn't have much productivity, but is getting like, goal line or some type of red zone share. And all of a sudden that turns into a score, as opposed to hoping that this kid just has a game that really, and I see the chat echoing it, just has not been there.
Yeah, you bring up a point too. Just sorry to, it's not just on the DFS. Like you can look to Bijan maybe if you don't want to play him. Look, again, I'll give a quick shout out. We had a question about what happened to the odd shop. We've got videos all over that channel. That channel has exploded. We're over 100,000 subs.
Amazing.
One day that show in the near future will hopefully return, but we've got everything you want over there. And I think getting to Bijan maybe in that iteration might be a way to go if you don't want to roster him, because it is a big opportunity cost at times with Jonathan Taylor, with Pacheco, with those type of backs. So you see it on the screen. My man Jordan just has it up. Like, I don't know. I don't think that this is going to be a key game, and the Sims kind of confirm that they're not jumping off the page with Falcons.
Nope, neither should we. Let's keep it moving here. This is another game. It's at Denver. I love the Browns in this game. Absolutely love the Browns. Yeah, I took them to win on the road. People are waiting for some shoe to drop for DRT. I'm trusting the coaching staff here and the fact that Denver is, you look at where they are, they give up. They're on the wrong side of point differential. With that said, it's a 36.5 point total. Defenses, I'm sure, are going to come into play here, but outside of that, I mean, you can start with Cleveland, Ben, and go down the list of opportunities that you have here. I mean, it's Njoku on our tool. I'll say that. Our Sims tool is popping to him. Everybody else has got really high negative ROI.
Tough game. Two teams that I think are going to be very comfortable playing stylistically to their identities, which seems defense at times. You know, Broncos have transformed, you know, within the season. I don't know how they really did that. They're playing much better. Njoku's a talented player. DTR, I still think, can get him the ball at times. It hurts to me. A guy that I'm a huge fan of, which is Amari Cooper. I don't really see myself getting to him today. I think that you can always make a case for Jerome Ford. He could be peppered with checkdowns off this type of, you know, game style. Not a great game though. I was fortunate to get through. I've been actually betting the Browns decent amount. I did have them and I won by the hook against Pittsburgh. I don't have a position on this game today, but I do think this is one of the worst DFS games, particularly for the Cleveland side. I'm not sure there's a lot to say, and I think Njoku might be the extent of it.
Yeah, it's amazing. You know, all the people that lost 3 units from my Ohio State play were silent when we won 2 units the week before on Cleveland as a massive smash. So you know, it's the life that is, man. But I get it. This is a fun team to bet. They are surprising, and they're able to get and move the ball despite not having key guys, and that's been a consistent theme that I just don't want to bet against. But again, now in DFS, it's a little different because of this low total and what's expected. I imagine the conversation is the same on Denver here. I mean, you do have Javonte Williams, so that's going to be an obvious play for a lot of people. You know, outside of just the Broncos and Browns defenses, do you see opportunities for Judy or even Sutton in this game?
So Sutton is obviously, first of all, I'm just a big fan of his game. He's been fantastic. But I do think we also have to look, you know, when you score in every game, your floor is pretty high. Like no matter what you do, you're going to be okay. And he has taken that to an extreme because he really hasn't had a monster game despite scoring in 5 straight games. And some of those games targets 6, 6, 3, 11, which is very good. And then 5 last time out. I do worry a little about that in a game like this. So this is not a good team. I really respect that Cleveland's defense is still able to cause a lot of problems. They're playing much better. But for DFS, I'm not sure I really see it there. Our man Laz in chat, Laz Gets Fit, one of the sharpest players out there, was asking about double tight end. I do see that because of Njoku being in there. McBride will get to. Ingram will, you know, we've talked about. There are tight end builds, dual tight end builds that I see. But for me, this entire game, I think Njoku's my favorite play, and that's just by default. I don't have much to say on either side of the ball.
Okay. I'm with you. I don't think that's a force by any means. You know, people looking at this and like, oh, it's 11:07. They only have 23 minutes left to get to these games. This is an easy one to bypass here. And again, if we've missed an obvious one, you let us know. We can go back, at least see what the tool says, what the top stacks, the Sims tool has to say about this. You see what Jordan has been able to put up there. Today is the last freaking day that you can take advantage of half off and win $1 million. Like we just saw somebody win $1 million. But what was that, last week? Eight days ago, I would think at most.
Yeah, we've been on an amazing run. We had not just a couple milli winners. We had someone take down the dollar. We had someone take down the play action. Some of like the small, because that is to me almost more difficult, truly, when you're beating like 400,000 people. So it's just been a fantastic run. Hopefully today we keep it going. Maybe I'll win the million. That would be useful. But if I don't, I hope it's someone watching this damn show.
Would you? How long would you take off? You wouldn't retire, but how long would you take off?
I would be here grinding Maction, not to worry.
Okay.
I just might mute a little quicker on my Twitter. I would have a more precise goblin radar for all the people out there. We did have an interesting. Before I know you're going to move to the next game, I just want to slide this in. Stewie just gave us a super chat about Russ. 0.75 fantasy points per DB against man coverage this year, and the Browns have the highest man rate in football. That's some really good information, and I get it. I just don't know construction-wise if I need to push it to there. If you see an angle with them, it's a very contrarian stack, and there's no doubt they're playing good football. I just don't know if that's how I want it to go today, even though I have to acknowledge Russ has been better.
Yes, he has, but I also agree that there's a lot of concern with just getting there in general, and I don't think anybody should force that. All right, so let's keep it moving here by all means. Kyler Murray's back in the fold. You have Matthew Stafford, the Rams, the issues there on the other side of this. Just looking at top stacks right now, Arizona and the Rams, well, more Arizona is in this kind of like mid spot, but hold on a second. The LA Rams, let's not bury the lead. The LA Rams, Ben Rasa, are our top rated stack on the tool. So let's hit it, man. Where are we? How deep are you going with your LA Rams stacks, right? Because we know that Kupp is going to be out there. Stafford, Williams as well is going to get a lot of love from the back spot. You would imagine Puka, but you know, are we looking at a Matthew Stafford, Tutu Atwell, Bryson Hopkins level stack for you?
No, that's not going to be happening. So I get it. So there's always two sides to this. I think it's an asset and a curse. When you stack a team like the Rams, barring something truly crazy, Matthew Stafford's not moving. He doesn't run at all. So you know, okay, I really need to load up on pass catchers if he's gonna get there to a tournament winning upside. And that makes it easy because you're looking like QB +2, maybe even QB +3. Now the flip side of it is, you know, it has to be all through the air with a guy like Stafford. And they grade out. I think they'll have advantages, but it's a pick your poison type team. You mentioned 3 or 4 guys. They're not cheap. Like Williams coming back, he's not cheap. Kupp is apparently okay with the ankle. He's still flat 8 on DraftKings. That's not an easy price point. So I get it. But it's not the easiest build for me. I wouldn't mind some pieces of the Rams, but I'll be honest, if they're like a crazy popular stack, it's not because I don't like it. Not sure how much I'll get of it when I look at all my lineups as a whole.
By the way, gotta love Laufey, right? Like the guy has all the excuses in the world to just not do anything at all today. He's on vacation. He's on paternity leave. He's on all that. And then we got a nice little Slack shout. Great show, boys. Now, I think he was specifically talking to you and the fact that Jordan didn't mess up any graphics or anything. And he's probably just like, I can't wait. This might actually hurt my cases. If he's watching this show and me hosting it, Ben, this may hurt my case for the over-under. And he may come back on Monday, just so you know. Like, I've had it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Laufey's lurking somewhere out there. Good people. We miss him. But yeah, I look at this and they grade out. I see why they grade out well, because again, all of your Rams production is coming with those Stafford stacks. If you want to go to Kyron, I get it. I still think there's some unknowns. I mean, is he just going to be thrust into like 25 carries? I don't know. I really don't. And I think that's a question that we're really not going to know the answer till we see it. And then on the other side, Arizona's not a team to be ignored either. I do like some Cardinals in this game.
Well, James Conner is the guy that's going to pop a lot, obviously, and recognizing, you know, where he is for our simulated ROI in the stack. Definitely going to be a running back that's going to be suggested a lot, but a pay-up option at tight end is going to be Trey McBride. And with Kyler Murray back, you know, even if it's just running him, the one guy, and I did see a couple of people in the chat asking if it's Greg Dortch season yet. If now on the calendar at 11:26:23, 11:13 in the afternoon, wherever you may be on the other side of the hemisphere, morning on this side. People asking, Ben, if it's Greg Dortch season. I don't know. For me, look, Trey McBride, you're paying up, but we have a healthy day for him at the tight end spot.
Yeah, I like Trey McBride. I think not only are you've seen some really good work for him. I think there's a chance, and I talk about this in golf more than anything. I think there's a chance that Trey McBride might just be amazing. And in 2 years, we're going to laugh that he was ever prices like this. And he's already, certainly increased in terms of his price and popularity. But I have no problem with that. In terms of George, I think we need to get clarification on Hollywood Brown. If Hollywood Brown sits, that changes the entire equation for me. If he doesn't, I'm not sure. I saw him get some work, but I think more often than not, he might be on the outside looking in. You still have Rondale, you have McBride, you've got Connor, you've got Hollywood. A lot of mouths to feed. And I worry about that a little bit. So keep an eye on that spot. I think that he could be in Kyler's stacks. You can do it, but I would feel a whole lot better if we get clarification on Hollywood. And if I had to guess from what I've seen, I think that Hollywood Brown is going to play.
Well, we'll be rolling right up to kick today. So what?
Live before locks got you covered.
Absolutely. It's not going to be Ben. I know that. It's not going to be me. I've got to get back to this here. But we are rolling through this, and if any news or information comes out, just stay here. You don't have to leave. We will leave, but new faces will pop in. So we've got about 15 minutes or so, couple of games to get to here, 2 more games, if you will, to get to, including that Eagles-Bills game, and there is some weather stuff I wanted to bring up since I'm sitting here in Philly. 2 quick things. One, another reminder, half off. It ends today. You get all the stochastic options that you want, 50% off your first purchase. The Sims tool just won a ton of money for a bunch of people. It's going to do it again today. Like, I have no doubt it's going to do it. Somebody out there, Ben, is going to tweet at the end of the day, thanks, fill in the blank, probably at Jazzraz DFS, maybe a Jordan Klein, maybe a Shander show, although they'll probably blame me more so.
I'll thank you.
This is amazing.
After I win the Millie today, I will tweet you personally and say thank you for being part of this show. But no, listen, I mean, you've seen it on the screen here. It's incredible information, fully customizable. I think I'm really a fascinating case. I'm a hand builder. I always have been. I always will be. I have integrated the Sims into my process, and I love it. It doesn't change how I go about building things, but it is absolutely part of my process now, and I've been loving it. Just seeing how this thing works. And then I put my own spin on it sometimes. You can still absolutely do that, but I've had a blast, and I think it's a really powerful tool for sure.
I love that you brought that up, because I use, for hand building, the Thursday through Monday tournaments is where I'll hand build those, right? I love those, because I stay away from Thursday. Now, Thanksgiving is different. You didn't get those, but I stay away from Thursday games as a whole. And then I'll use our Sims tool to run through lineups for Sunday and Monday. So I'll get the projections for Sunday night and Monday night together with the Sunday slate, and then I can hand pick and build off of that. I mean, you're right. You're so right. Like, this is not an all or nothing. You can fully integrate the process into hand building and whatever else you do. The other thing I want to mention here, and you know me, like, I am not one to toot my own horn or anything in regards to that here, but we've got over 3,300 people watching, 544 likes. We can get to 1,000. I mean, I've done this entire show holding a child, Ben. Okay, like, I'm not complaining, right? Exactly.
Oh, no. Actually, don't have a child.
Me. You've been holding me this whole time, so you actually have been babysitting.
It's a nesting doll situation,
right? Exactly. All I'm asking for is to hit the damn thumbs up button, give Ben a little tap on the back, give Jordan a little pat on the back, and like, even me, the fact that we're doing this damn thing with a damn child, all right, that should tell you how dedicated we are today on a Sunday.
Yeah, we're doing some good stuff, and like I said, I feel good about the slate. We made good time. We got 2 games left. We're gonna be just fine.
Yes.
Yeah, hit that like button. It is appreciated. It really does help keep these shows free, and we hope the information is quite useful.
Ben, I don't even think you meant to go as deep with that joke as you did, right? Like, you set up the fact that you too were holding a baby, and then the joke was like, oh wait, I'm not. But the reality is that you have been babysitting me for an hour and now 18 minutes. So even Leibowitz caught the double-edged humor.
Yeah, we're always thinking here. We play that long game.
Yeah, Rozo music. I just whipped that out in my inventory. I went to the inventory page and I said, no rope, no gun, no helmet. Give me the baby.
Smart.
All right, my friend. This line is at 9.
Yep.
I really love the Raiders, 9.5. I really love the Raiders before the Max Crosby news came down. This game to me, Ben, the one thing that I'm most confident in, and I actually went a little bit lower. I'm under this game. Kansas City is not going to have this magical breakout game. Their wide receivers are not talented enough. Travis Kelce has shown that he can be in and out. I mean, is Taylor Swift going to be in this game at Vegas? That would change my opinion a little bit, but I don't think she is, right? Look, I think this is an underplay for me in this game. The Raiders are fine not scoring points, and I don't think the Chiefs have this breakout that everybody's expecting.
Yeah, it'll be a fascinating game in the sense that, Kansas City probably disappointed, looking for a bounce back spot. But personnel wise, you are what you are in some regard. Like, I agree. They're not just going to be able to flip a switch and everything is going to be fixed. Now, it's still the Chiefs, and they've got some weapons that I think we need to talk about. So we'll get Kelce out of the way. He's Travis Kelce. He's amazing. It's a different type of lineup construction if you get to him. Your opportunity cost is massive because you're allocating north of 8K at a position where everyone else is spending like half that, but it can be done, of course. Then you've got Pacheco. Good game script. He had 19 carries in the loss to Philly. He can catch the ball when asked to. He has not been scoring, but if he finds the end zone, he's probably going to get you there in a nice way. And I think he could flirt with 100 yards in this game. I do like Pacheco. Now it gets a little interesting with Tony out. MVS is MVS. Yeah. I'm not even going to spend time on him, but Justin Watson is flat 3. I think a lot of people are going to look to him. Certainly in cash, he could be in the conversation. He had 11 targets against Philadelphia, 5 for 53. And obviously a touchdown. He was a staple of that showdown. He's going to factor into the slate. At flat 3, I think Watson is a guy that you are looking to if you need salary relief.
Yeah, I mean, they dropped what could have been a game-winning catch to extend the drive. Like this was...
that game was tilting on many levels. But with the main slate, it's a lot different. When we get the Chiefs on an island, we're looking at like Noah, MVS. Here, you're going to consolidate it to me, Pacheco, Kelce, Watson as a pay down. I think he's very, very playable at that price point. And then you have dart throws. If you want to go to one of these other type of guys, I get it, but they're on the outside looking in for me.
I wouldn't hate you if you went back to a guy like MVS. We've seen this time and time again. Patrick Mahomes is a guy that can put the football anywhere on the field, as we saw. They're going to need at some point, right? Someone like that. And down the line, I would say I wouldn't be, Justin Watson. Shout out to our guy, Nathan Joyce. He's also on the Odd Shopper Discord, by the way. So if you want to pop in and get half off on that Black Friday sale over there, you get to have the Discord and chill with Nathan, who's just crushing both Twitter and our shorts department, meaning like hitting bets. That's what I mean there. So the other side of this, look, man, Aidan O'Connell, the Raiders just don't want to give Aidan O'Connell the football and say, not only don't win this game, but just we don't even want you to keep up. This game feels like Josh Jacobs gets 25 carries no matter what the score is.
In a perfect world, you would assume they want to slow the tempo, lean on the ground game. But I will say, O'Connell did throw the ball 41 times against Miami, and ridiculous, it could mirror that. Now, he had 3 picks. It didn't work at all. They did keep it respectable. And Chad brought this up. Devontae Adams, 13 targets in the last 2 games. I get it. I do. I think it is a little tough. He doesn't grade out well on the Sims. And I'm not getting to a ton of him, but if you told me that you wanted to twist in this game and have, Adams on one side and Watson on the other, Adams on one side and Pacheco on the other, I get that build. I'm not getting to any Raiders stacks, but I do think Devontae Adams is still such a talented player. If he sees north of 10 targets again, he will have an opportunity to get you there.
Anybody else you want to?
Not really.
I don't. Rice?
No, I mean, he's part of the Chiefs offense. So if you're part of the Chiefs offense, you are in the conversation, but no, I'd rather have Watson or Kelce.
By the way, that whole Taylor Swift shit is real in the sense of if she's there or not. Like if she's at the game, you better roll with Kelsey. If she's not, Kelsey's a fade for me. Now, not I'm saying like, fade in DFS, like you don't play him, but I'm not rushing to get to him in any capacity, betting or DFS. If Swift isn't there, this is a thing, Ben.
Yeah, well, I'll give people a little sneak behind the glass. We don't have that incorporated into the Sims. So we've got Logic and the Sims on one side, and then we've got my man Eytan Shander on the other side. I believe she's still in Brazil for all those people out there.
Correct. But, he's not going to be here, and it's another reason why I love the Raiders right away before the Max Crosby news.
There we go. Hopefully Pacheco has the day. I think he's someone that is really important. Watson, I'm not gonna say he's a free square because he's absolutely not, but he is. If you're looking for a flat min guy, I think it has to kind of be him.
First off, you put Alex Baker under one of those polys right now and ask him if Taylor Swift record with or without Travis Kelce factors into his build. I would bet money that Baker is factoring this in. All right. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. Well, we'll have to revisit after we get another data point today.
Oh my goodness. All right. Before we get to this last game, here is the Ben Rasa trend of the day. Okay. I waited for the very end here for all of you out here to get this. And again, I get these sent to me from this one guy. I don't know who he follows or all, but they're fantastic. Play against any NFL team as either a favorite or a dog of 3 or fewer points, coming off 3 consecutive wins. If the last game was an ATS loss, and in the previous 2 games were outright underdog wins, if they are facing a 444 or greater opponent. Teams are 1-12 straight up, 0-13 against the spread in this role since 1980.
I only heard part of that, but yeah, that seems not useful. I only heard 1980 and then my brain shut down. I was reading chat. I'm sorry. A Baker Minshew stack. 2 real good options. I would go
Baker or Minshew. That's the super chat.
Yeah, I think 2 real good options there. I respect the Colts. I actually like the way that the Bucs stack looks. I'll go Baker for you.
Okay. And if the Browns win today, you can thank that trend, because the Denver Broncos are the team you should be playing against when I laid all that out there. All right. Last game on the slate. That's why I took Denver or Cleveland, which is not true. But Buffalo at 3. This was at 3.5 for a blink of the eye. It's been bet down since then. Philadelphia at home, 48.5. Short and sweet for me. I'm on Buffalo +3. The biggest and only reason, Ben, is because this is in between 2 circle games for Philadelphia. When the schedule came out for the season, they had this big circle next to Kansas City, and they had this big circle next to San Francisco. Those are the only 2 games, not Dallas, not anything like that. Those are the only 2 games that the Philadelphia Eagles truly cared about. And here comes Buffalo, sandwiched between those 2 with playoffs and everything else hopeful on the mind still. I think the Bills have a shot to win outright, but I took them at +3 on that key number. I don't know if this is a high-scoring game or a low-scoring game, and that's where it gets a little tricky with DFS.
Yeah, I think that this is actually a pretty simple game to sum up. You've got 2 really talented teams. Don't think it's the best environment because you're paying a premium. It's skinny stack season for me. And what I mean by that, if you want to go Allen to Diggs or Hurts to A.J. Brown, I get it. You have Dalton Kincaid, to me, more of a one-off, or you could attach him. I mean, you're always going to attach him. But he's more of a price point that's a lot more palatable, and he fits, of course, double tight end builds. On the other side, we've seen Smith consolidate some of that Goddard production, and we could see that again. Still believe, A.J. Brown is an absolute monster, but he is at 9,000. That's Tyreek territory. And then we did see against the Chiefs, DeAndre Swift was fantastic. He still only had 15 touches. He had 12 carries and he had 3 targets and he caught all of them. He found the end zone. 6,800, I think, is a little premium. If you wanted to go there, Bills defense has not been strong. They're on the road. I get it, but I'll keep it simple. Skinny stacks for me. You have elite quarterbacks with an elite alpha receiver. You've got Kincaid. Shakir's probably the lowest paid on option. I'm not really entertaining that, though. Then you have Swift as a one-off as well.
Love Kincaid in this game. Absolutely
love him. He's a player.
Yeah. And look, Philadelphia, spare me on the whole Travis Kelce shit. The guy dropped 15 footballs last week, and 3 of them were for first downs. So looking at this position, the Eagles struggle against the tight end. I mean, they have not been able to solve overall that spot. So I think you're actually absolutely in a great position going there. Look, Jalen Hurts on the other side. You mentioned Devontae. That's where I'm curious to hear your thoughts on. By the way, Julio Jones is a sneaky play today at 3,300. Just saying, with that's tight end. All right.
No problem. I think that's where it's a balance of slate and opportunity cost. Like if this was a showdown, if this game was at night, I think you could really get to some deep end plays like that. On a full 10 game slate, to me, most of those guys are on the outside looking in. But yeah, Kincaid, certainly this is not a game to ignore, but it's not my priority either. Just because you're allocating a ton of salary, I think people will go like Hurts, AJ Brown, they'll attach Watson, things like that, and round it out. So it's a good game, but these guys are very expensive, and it's for good reason. Some of the best teams in the league right here.
AJ Brown has been kind of quiet where Devontae Smith steps up. You don't have Dallas Goedert, a clear designation in the pass game for him. I would not move anywhere else. Like Jack Stahl's not a guy that I'm racing to get to.
No.
Zacchaeus is not a guy that I'm looking at. But Julio Jones, red zone opportunities, big body. He's going to be out there. He and DeAndre Swift are my two favorite Eagles this week.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, again, listen, it's the Eagles. They're a damn good team.
Wet today.
And they're at home, and the Bills defense has had some issues. It's not the best game environment for various reasons. I'd rather be in a dome. But you know, they'll be just fine. And it's Jalen Hurts. You see the leverage right there on your screen from the Sims tool. That tells the story in a lot of ways. So not a game to shy away from, but just one of many on this slate. Fun slate, honestly. Really excited to see it.
What's your, real quick on the way out? And again, thank you to everybody. Hope you had a fantastic time with us. It flew by. Thumbs up, subscribe. We love that. We need that. Half off. Today is the day. So if you've been waiting, well, I only do it until the final day. Whatever stupid reason that you have in your head, come to reality right now and sign up and take advantage. The Sims tool, the top stacks, everything that you see we use here, you're going to get half off your first price. Real quick on the way out, what's your favorite bet today?
My favorite bet is the Jaguars. I like them. Talked about that. Also have a bet for Sunday Night Football, which I do every week over on Odd Chopper. Again, you can always go over there for your betting needs. We've got you covered. The same crew that is here at Stochastic. Just a really fun time. And I know you already mentioned it, but I'll just reiterate. Don't go anywhere. We may be ducking out of here, but the boys are coming up next to answer all your questions, get inactives, injury news, and see what else we got going on. So I'm actually going to watch the show because I need to see some of these updates. I'm very, very excited to hear it. And I hope someone wins $1 million today. That is the goal.
By the way,
every week.
Speaking of which, the guy that won the $1 million using our tools last week did factor in whether or not Taylor Swift was at that Eagles game. Just saying. We'll see you.
It is
That's
officially.
Elf. I've seen that one. My mom made me watch it.
That was very nice of her. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to NFL Live Before Lock, presented by Other Shoulder. Owner's Box, there we go. Smash that like button as we get going here. Eytan Shander filling in there for our guy Lofty. Lofty, number 2, man. Congratulations to him, of course. Give him some love over on the old Twitters there. But yeah, just give us some love here by hitting that like button as we get going. Jordan Klein producing yet again for his 48th hour in a row. We never let him leave that room, nor should we. It's great stuff. But friends, we got Matt Gajewski here, Matt_Gajewski, king of the college football streets, these NFL streets too. How you doing, my dude?
Doing good, man. Excited for the games. We have a couple really good real life games. And I think that makes for a tighter DFS slate with pricing, but it'll still be fun. I'm excited to play some of the studs.
Yeah, there's going to be some studs. There's going to be some run back of all of the shit that went wrong for me last week. Hi, Cooper Kupp. How are you doing this fine Sunday? Hopefully the ankle's okay. Oh, low ankle sprain.
I played a lineup in the Big Millie last week that had Cooper Kupp, Curtis Samuel, Aaron Jones, and Devin Achane.
That lineup didn't place. I'm just getting a feeling.
No, it almost took last.
That's always fun. If you ain't first, you're last. Hell, Ricky, I was high when I said that. You don't understand that movie quote?
That's the racing movie, right?
Good enough. I'm going to count that as a win. Jordan Klein, confirmed, win. That's a win.
I don't remember the name of it.
Ricky Bobby. It's fine. The ballad. It's beautiful. Talladega Nights. Anywho, I think we're ready to talk football here. Some actives and actives to kind of cover here beforehand. I think the main one for me is the fact that you get Dameon Pierce back into the fray. You have Zay Jones here active for week 12. These weird splits that we're seeing for Calvin Ridley, and I will say Trevor Lawrence as well. Zay Jones on the field confirmed matters to them, but Dameon Pierce completely devalues Devin Singletary. Not a start for me in your year-longs, and today, from a DFS perspective, not going to be touching him whatsoever. Anything from the actives and actives you wanted to touch on?
Not really out of stuff that wasn't expected. So we had all this news ahead of time. So nothing that's changed my builds.
Eric has watched every movie ever made. Not true. You're not on fire. Shake and bake, baby. Boom. It's kind of like tip to tip from the NBA Live Before Lock, but it is our own little variation of it. And speaking of such, let's get ourselves to work, shall we? No days off. You ready for this?
Yeah, man. I'm excited. It's a good slate.
Yeah, this is a really good slate. This is probably my favorite slate of the entire season. And, you know, I think getting Kyren Williams back, Rams, Arizona, oh my God. All right, let's just begin here with the top at the quarterback range. And Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen are playing each other. And this is a game that I just get the feeling that it's gotten steamed up because I feel like every person on every show all week long has said, oh, Jalen Hurts and oh, Josh Allen singles. And, you know, you get Kincaid and you get Shakira. Going to be wild stuff here with the quarterback position, putting together Buffalo stacks, Philadelphia stacks. It's in the afternoon window, which, you know, for, you know, if you're playing the Eric Lindquist late swap game, go ahead and drink. But I'm just feeling like you do not want to be without either of these quarterbacks in a large portfolio. I'm going to have a lot of skinnies of both. I think I prefer Josh Allen based on the fact that I think Jalen Hurts is going to be a lot of people's cash game quarterbacks, probably should be a lot of people's cash game quarterbacks, and that should just artificially raise what his ownership ends up being in large field tournaments. But how do you feel about that game specifically, considering it's basically both expensive quarterbacks we have on this slate besides Mahomes?
Yeah, 2 best quarterback plays on the slate. Not really that close, I think, with everyone priced up. And just a construction thing overall, like everything is priced up outside of a couple injury-related receivers. Defenses are priced up. So I don't think your lineups are all that comfortable with these quarterbacks, but we're just not really looking at a lot of alternatives. Pat Mahomes is in this range, but he's having an awful year, like fantasy, DFS-wise. Great real-life quarterback. He's just throwing to a bunch of scrubs at wide receiver. So he's not only hard to stack, but Kelsey's getting older. I mean, MVS is just dropping passes straight into his hands, and it's really hurt him from a fantasy production standpoint. And then you have Allen and Hurts, and these guys run. Mahomes doesn't. They have clear stacking options. The game environment is a little better. I know Kansas City's a massive favorite, but at this top range, I still am gravitating towards Hurts and Josh Allen. I don't really have anything else to add to what you said. They're a large part of my portfolio. I still think they're priorities. even though they're a little harder to stack with the tight pricing on this slate. But there's just not that many alternatives.
Yeah, Philadelphia's defense, well, they have amazing pieces. It seems as though the whole is just allowing a lot of wide receiver production, a lot of tight end production, and is going to be something that I want to focus on with these Josh Allen stacks, trying to find ways to be different. And it's not too hard to be different. There's some really good chalk, I feel like. I think Jonathan Taylor, good chalk. I think Trey McBride, good chalk. And then I've got one guy that I was talking a little bit in the chat on the show before, so maybe some people caught it, but there is one guy from the running back position that I'm just a little bit floored at his ownership, because I think new situations breed new opportunities, and this is going to be my big stand. It looks like in my lineups for today. Go Jaylen Warren. But let's continue on our merry way here in the quarterback position. You run into the Trevor Lawrence, this 6K. I mean, the 7K range is basically CJ Stroud. He's the only 7K quarterback, so I'll lump him in with these other guys. I love Kyler Murray at 6%. He's looked decent. We're getting some production from him on the ground, which is, again, 13 rushing attempts here, a rushing touchdown in each of them. That's really elevated his floor, having that rushing volume back into the mix. That wasn't something that he had a ton at the beginning of last season before the injury, but how do you feel about the 6K range here? Because Trevor Lawrence pulling all of the ownership.
Which is interesting, and I'm still getting a lot of him in our sims, and it's been consistent across field size. In the smaller field stuff, I'm getting a lot of like super stack stuff with him, like 2 pass catchers, sometimes ETN in those lineups. So I think it's mainly a pricing thing and a combination of this being an awesome game environment that could get back and forth. We know Stroud is definitely a very willing shootout partner on the other side. Don't really respect either defense, and Jacksonville's a ton of defensive injuries in their secondary. Their number 1 corner is out. So this game could get really back and forth. And I'm not sure it's owned enough. That's coming straight from our sims. And I also think the stack is just a lot more affordable in general. Like your wide receiver 1, Christian Kirk, who I believe is still slightly ahead of Calvin Ridley's at 5,400. So rather than like Allen to Diggs, I mean, Jalen Hurts to A.J. Brown, you're getting Lawrence to Christian Kirk and saving a ton of salary, so you can jam Jonathan Taylor, whatever other expensive running back you want. And maybe you can still get a one-off Steph Diggs or something like that in those lineups. So just as a whole, they project really well. There's nothing really outside of Trevor Lawrence's poor performance this year that I think holds you back. So I'm still playing a lot of Lawrence.
Are you a little confused that Matt Stafford's 8% after being like 2% last week?
I think that's just a pricing thing, honestly. Like, we don't have any good value plays. So I sort of think that is just a product of the slate rather than people really liking him as an individual play, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. That does make sense. It's also, for me, it's just tagging along with all the Nakua and Cup that I'm going to have again this week. I don't have as much as I had last week because I felt like it was going to be very, very undervalued there. But now going into Arizona, this is more of like people can star highlight it and see that, yeah, we can expect more points. 24 implied total here for the Rams today. There's a lot that is going to be Kyler Murray and Matthew Stafford based in my lineups in my 150. Building out 150 today, also playing, my general small field stuff. I think I'll probably have one share of each of them throughout that. But then this sub 6K range, my friend, this is a fascinating spot because Baker Mayfield, 5,500. Going up against Indy, that's fantastic. But like Gardner Minshew's the guy all the way down there at 5,100. Yeah, he's pulling 9.7% ownership. But as you play around with the Sims today, it is fascinating to me to see how much Minshew and how much Jonathan Taylor I end up getting here in my lineups. Now, there are still some shares of like Baker Mayfield, Josh Allen, and Jalen Hurts really taking over the Sims tool today. That's really kind of been the story for my 150. But as I'm building out some of these smaller fields, I think the $5,100 price tag gets a lot of studs into your lineup that you can't otherwise afford going up to those 8K guys. I like taking some shots on Gardner Minshew, combining him with Josh Downs, kind of a remember me spot. He was dinged up now coming off of, last week, taking a week off. Good stuff, I think, coming very, very shortly for him. Michael Pittman, everybody knows my love for him, I hope. And Jonathan Taylor, I think I'm just fine kind of putting them both together in the same lineups, trying to get all of those touchdowns. But is Gardner Minshew somebody that you're focused in on, or is there somebody else in this 5K range that you've got your eye on?
Had a little bit of Gardner Minshew. My most fun player in this range right now is Baker Mayfield, but I'm trying to spread this out a little bit. Right now, I'm coming in around 25% of my lineups to Baker, which is bit above where I'd like to be. There's just a floor, I think, that's pretty nasty with every quarterback in this range. So I'm going to try to spread it out a little more. But anyway, to speak to that, Baker, I think, is a great play. Indianapolis has an awful defense, and Baker actually has the studs really across the board. And Rachaad White's going to play in this game. That should help the run game, and he's an excellent pass catcher out of the backfield. So, I mean, you're looking at stacks with Evans, Godwin pretty easily. You can play a contrarian Cade Otton, and these stacks are dirt cheap. This game, I think, is also in the top 4. There's like 4 games I really want to play. It's Jacksonville, Houston, Tampa Bay, Indy, Buffalo, Philly, and then Arizona, LA. So you get a piece of this game with this stack at a cheap price point, and then you can run skinnies of like everything else you like. So, for example, you could do like a Mayfield to Otton to Evans, and then it's pretty easy to get like a Swift Diggs or like a Shakir AJ Brown, if that makes sense. So these lineups are awesome, but trying to just spread myself out a little bit. And I do like this side a lot more than, you know, like the cheap Minshew stacks, which I think are a little harder to get to unless you're willing to play like a lot of Minshew with Jonathan Taylor. Just he's an incredibly chalky piece.
Yes, he is. But he is good chalk, in my opinion. And Gardner Minshew, going through the average simulated ROI. Again, can we pull up the Sims tool here, Jordan Klein? Because I think it would be a very, very fun experience for everybody involved. First of all, because we have promo code Sims. Last day of it going today. Last day, 50% off, promo code Sims. Friends, you want to be jumping in and checking this out because this has revamped my process, not just in the NBA, which, you know, is every single Monday through Friday. I'm doing the live before lock with Greg Ehrenberg, but also in the NFL streets here. This began in baseball, and it was profitable right from the get-go. As we've come into NFL, one of my favorite things to do is taking a look over at the player ROI. Yes, what really matters is the overall sum of the parts, having the lineup come together in a certain way where, yeah, it's going to be differentiated, but it also has upside, especially based on percentage to first. And you can do all of this interestingly enough in the Sims tool. Again, percentage to first. How much is the payout? Or if it's a 100K tournament, you can ramp that to what, 20K to first. It would be 20% to first. It's going to change ever so slightly your highest graded out lineups. And well, the average simulated ROI for me, Gardner Minshew, he is way, way up there. Just individual as a play. I think it's so easy to put him, Josh Downs, Michael Pittman into lineups, all of them in my Sims and in the Sims tool here today, showing a ton of average simulated ROI going to those guys specifically. Chiefs defense, they're popular, but also coming up near the top of the board. So wild stuff. 12.2% there in the Sims. Obviously, there's some small settings that are changed between the way that Jordan and I are doing these. And yeah, he's doing a great job and phenomenal stuff, being able to pull that up here on the fly. But Demario Douglas, good Lord, this is going to be a scary slate with New England. Anything else you really want to talk about at quarterback? Because I think it's pretty clear cut. I think there's some good chalk. I don't feel like I'm missing out on somebody. I don't think we need to talk about Jake Browning, Tommy DeVito. Will Levis, I have like 1% of. Mac Jones, we got news before this show that they were going to have Bailey Zappi come in. I tried to quick fire the under of 210.5 passing yards for Mac Jones, but it got taken off the board instantly. That was a bummer, but I don't really find all that much appealing down here at the bottom.
Yeah, me either. I want to highlight one difference I got, and I'm curious to see how this worked for you. It sounds like you're playing larger field stuff today. I did see a pretty decent separation in the Minshew ownership between large and small field. So the smaller I got, the more it was giving me of just like Taylor straight up. And I think the larger you go, you're getting quite a bit of leverage using Minshew in the Indianapolis stacks. So I'm just a little curious about your field size and want to hear, because that's what happened with me. It's just a ton of Minshew in the larger stuff, not as much in smaller.
Yeah, I mean, for some of the small field stuff, I guess maybe there's some element where Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts just elevate your floor so much, and it's so hard to put doubles of them together and feel good about your lineups or have that specific run back on the other side. I mean, AJ Brown, Devonta Smith are not cheap. And those are really the only two pass catchers I want any part of from Philadelphia. I'm not playing any of these ancillary pieces. And for Buffalo, I think it's easier to construct and then have that run back. But still, if you want to get to Diggs, if you want to get to Kincaid at the tight end position, these are expensive players. One thing that I think for me, when he talks about like skinny stacks and trying to find a way to be a little bit different, I am in small field going to some Mahomes Kelsey singles and kind of like taking the direct pivot off of the line of people who are going to that Buffalo Philly game that's just gotten steamed up more and more as the week's gone on. But I think for large field, it's kind of like the opposite for me. I'm getting to a lot of Hurts, Mahomes, as I've ran the sims for the larger field stuff. And then Gardner Minshew feels like somebody for small field just because I'm able to get to these pass catchers and these running backs. And, the running back mid-tier has been popular all season long. It should be. And now Kyren Williams, we have him for 13.1%. I don't think that that's enough based on the volume that we've seen for him this season. And we'll get to the running back position. But there are still so many cheap mid-range running backs. So there's really nobody to pay up for. No McCaffrey, no Eckler. These guys are not on the slate. It's Kamara or bust above 7,500. So maybe what it is Hurts and Mahomes, just because of you have more money to spend with the running back position being a little bit more scarce, or just, I guess, cheap would be the better way of putting it. You're going to get to Minshew more for the large field types, but I'm kind of running into the opposite. Did that make any sense, or was I just rambling?
No, it makes sense. Just
Okay.
curious. I was curious about your approach with Minshew.
Yeah, it's a weird one. And again, I think his popularity has me pulling away from jamming, because this would feel like a spot I would want a ton of. But I love that the ROI, I just ran, as we were talking here, another one, another pre-contest simulation. And I am seeing kind of what you're seeing here as I reduced the field size, as I took the field and put it down to 2,000 instead of the 10,000 that I built for initially. I am seeing a smaller average simulated ROI on all of those guys that you were just talking about, specifically Minshew, like Minshew, Josh Downs, Michael Pittman, a lot higher average simulated ROI for the large field. So that is a great shout out by you.
Yeah, and to sum it up from a football perspective, I think he's a very good play. It was just, honestly, I think this difference comes from Taylor. It's not even Minshew related. It's like a leverage thing. So the larger you go and you use full Colts onslaught, or you just remove Taylor from your lineups, I think that's mainly what's driving it, to put my thinking cap on and try to dive under the hood of these.
Yeah, love it. Well, you're the best there ever was, plain and simple. You wake up and you piss excellence. There's the Ricky Bobby. We're just going to thread Talladega Nights throughout this entire show. That seems like a fun way to do things on a Sunday morning. As such, you guys should smash the like button if you enjoy that bit. And if you don't, well, yeah, it's the big red gum he has at the end. There's these end credits. It's if you don't chew big red gum, F you. He just basically it's hilarious. It was funny in my mind anyway. Good talk. Glad we had it. Anywho, my friends, if you guys want to be able to get yourself the Sims tool for a month free, yeah, you heard me, for an absolute free opportunity, here's how you do it. You finish well in DFS today. Yes, we're talking about the Hall of Fame. Good stuff we have going constantly. If you download the avatar at stokastic.com/avatar, place in the top 3 of any contest with over 5,000 contestants, and you tweet your win to @StokasticHOF, you're going to get yourself a free month of the Stokastic package of your choosing. That's the Sims and Data, the Sims Max. Doesn't matter which package size it is, you're going to get a month of it free. May I recommend the most expensive one, so that you have an opportunity to see everything that your heart desires to see this tool do for you. Again, it has been a huge part of my process. You can change certain factors, and now you can change the projections directly on the page before you go into that pre-contest simulator. It is a game changer. Flat out, period, end of story. Flat out game changer. Check it out, my friends. Again, simply download the avatar. Simple as that. Stokastic HOF. That is going to be where you tweet your wins to. Well, if you want to win a tournament today, the running back position, figuring out what the F to do here, kind of a big part of it. And I'm going to start with the chalk instead of going expensive and working our way down like we normally do, because Jonathan Taylor, 30.6% ownership. He's going up against Tampa Bay. And last week was the first time that we really saw, well, I guess 2 weeks ago, because they didn't play in week 11. Nice bye week. But Jonathan Taylor, 23 rushing attempts, 1 target. Zach Moss, barely on the field. We finally saw the tide start to turn, where you're not going to have Zach Moss on the field. One opportunity, one look. Do you know that movie?
No.
Okay. So just talk to me about Jonathan Taylor. That would be appreciated.
Yeah, he's an awesome play. I think it mainly just stems from the workload moving away from Zach Moss towards him. I'm not as scared of this matchup as I think a lot of people might be. When you dive into fantasy production allowed, really it's just because Tampa Bay's only allowed 2 rushing touchdowns. You can dive under the hood and look at some of the efficiency metrics. Running backs have actually been fine from a rushing expectation standpoint, they just haven't gotten the end zone as much. So if you're even like, I don't know, nitpicking the matchup, I think that's even a little overblown. So as far as game environment goes, it's elite. Workload projects to be elite unless you think Zach Moss comes back and handles more, which I don't think is going to happen. Everything sets up for him here. So I think he's awesome chalk. The larger the field gets, the more interested I am in fading him. But for like cash game, small field stuff, this guy's awesome. And for large fields, there's plenty of ways to build with him in your lineups where he can still be a good play. So I think Colts onslaughts are live, or just make sure you're not like, I don't know, locking in Hurts and Justin Watson and all of the chalk when you play Jonathan Taylor. But yeah, he's an awesome play.
He has positive average simulated ROI. He's 6,900 getting almost, well, I mean, we're assuming a similar workload, 85, 90% of the snaps. He got paid. It was always going to shift to him at some point. And last week was like the overall tipping point. It was kind of week 9, but week 10 for sure was solidified. All the Jonathan Taylor and all the land. And as such, it is so hard for me to get away from him today. I understand there are people in the chat who are going to call him bad chalk, who he sucks. And Tampa Bay is third in the NFL at defending the running back position. So they've given up the third fewest fantasy points to opposing running backs on the whole. But when you get somebody like Jonathan Taylor in a game that has a 23 total and he is getting all of the work, it is really hard to see this not panning out for you in some capacity. And the opportunity cost at the running back position is like basically nothing this week.
Yeah, I mean, they have a good defense on paper because they haven't allowed a lot of touchdowns. They actually haven't been that good at defending the position. So I'm not really that worried about matchup with this situation. But I mean, good chalk, bad chalk stuff. Like you can build with good chalk you can build like with chalk in your lineups. It's not like, is he good or bad chalk? If you don't want to play him and you think he's over projected or something, you can take leverage with other players at this position. You could build with Minshew. If you think he's a fine play and you trust the projections, which I do, I think you can build with or without him. And there's plenty of ways to do so. So I'm going to be using plenty of him. He's a top 3 owned running back in my portfolio. I think he's your cash game running back, one of the first ones in your lineup. So, I mean, anytime you're like almost locking someone in cash, it's really hard to argue that they're a bad play. I think it's just as you get bigger in field size, you need to be cognizant of that ownership he will be carrying.
So I ran a sim on Wednesday. Wednesday's usually when I start my process, Wednesday night, and then kind of try to catch up on as much as possible. It was actually a little bit later. It was into Friday because we had Thanksgiving. So Friday, I was going back and forth with EMAC as well. Just saying, man, we were both burning the midnight oil there on Friday, trying to get caught up on everything. One of these weird weeks where, yeah, Thursday's its own slate, Sunday's its own slate. You and I did live before a lock here a couple days ago. And well, we're kind of getting caught up with everything. Rashad White was by far my highest owned running back leading into that. The Indianapolis Colts dead last at defending the running back position here in the NFL this season, giving up the most fantasy points to opposing running backs. And well, Rashad White, he gets the passing game volume, has been getting a lot of like all of the running volume here. Chase Edmonds got mixed in for all of one snap. Then it comes out that he gets downgraded to questionable on Saturday. He's got the Q tag next to him. And I started thinking, oh God, it's going to be like Chase Edmonds or Keyshawn Vaughn season. And those are not seasons you want to be a part of. It's like winter in South Dakota. Rashad White is 6,100, my friends. I'm going to just blindly play him going into the abyss with this. I think he's the main run back I want from Tampa Bay. I understand the Evans and Godwin steam, but like, I really like Rashad White in some of these Gardner Minshew type builds, mainly because he is getting all of the running back opportunity. I think that maintains. How do you feel about him on the other side of this game?
Yeah, he's completely fine. I mean, I'm not really worried about the injury. If we were worried, I don't think he'd even just play. So, I mean, I'm still pretty confident in his workload, and he has maybe the best workload in the NFL outside of Christian McCaffrey.
Yep.
So I think you can be pretty confident in him here. He's my most owned running back with people being scared of him, which again, when people are being cowards, I'll kind of lean into the uncertainty and know that I could get burned with it, or just get a guy under own who has a monster workload. Indy has a terrible run defense. You already laid that out, so I won't really belabor this point, but I mean, he catches the ball well out of the backfield. Baker checks down a ton. And then, I mean, some of the efficiency stuff I think is overblown. This guy actually is really good yards after contact per attempt, force missed tackles. They're just not giving him a lot of room to run. So if you're like picking out matchups for him to potentially have efficiency, there's not many better matchups than the Colts. You've got like the Panthers in that conversation. So I think everything lines up for him. He was a person I was actively trying to come in overweight on today. So you and I are in complete agreement with it. I also love him as like a pivot off Mayfield. Plus he's not expensive. So you can actually do stuff like Hurts, Allen, and then use Rachaad White over like a Jonathan Taylor or some of the other expensive backs. Have leverage, and I still feel pretty good about this. So I'm really interested in Rachaad White. He'll be my most owned running back.
Ooh, look at that. So Jonathan Taylor's still number 1 for me. Number 2, Rachaad White. Can you guess number 3?
Kyren.
Jalen. We're going to Jalen Warren, friends, 5,400. But before we do, we're going to continue down our merry way in the 6K range. And Kyren Williams, I have no doubt that he is going to be the number 1 running back here for the Rams. But will he walk back into the exact role he had before his injury? For the first 5 weeks, he hadn't seen fewer than 70% of snaps in any of them, 73% of snaps in any of them, to be exact here. Somebody who's playing 3/4 or more of the snaps here is extremely valuable against an Arizona team that's also pitiful at defending you or me or anybody running a football or throwing a football. And we get news as soon as I say this. Kyren Williams will be the Rams' lead back in week 12. Royce Freeman will also get carries, I assumed as such. Darrell Henderson got reverted to the practice squad, although he is still eligible to be called up before first kickoff. I don't know if he's there or not. We are going to be paying attention to those inactives. There are 4 afternoon games, 6 in the early window. Fun 10-game slate that sets out really, really nicely for some of that late swap I know and love. But Kyren Williams, that's going to be somebody else that I want to have in my portfolio. Who are you landing on here in this 6K range the most?
Love Kyren. He's my 4th most owned running back.
Look at that. We're on the same dudes. This is good. This bodes well for us, except for we're fucked because we're playing Kupp and Nakua. So there's that.
That did not go well for me last week.
No, it did not.
But with Kyren, I mean, like, what are they going to do? Give Royce Freeman carries? I understand they were pretty vocal about wanting to get work off his plate early in the year. They didn't do that. He ended up getting hurt. Now he's coming back. They're again saying they want to take work off his plate, but to give to who? Like, they also need to win games. So you're towing this line. It's like, all right, we can take work off Kyren Williams' plate and lose games, or we can play him as much as we want, maybe win. If he gets hurt, we lose games. So it's like, you should probably play him. He's your best running back. If he gets hurt, you are going to lose anyway by not playing him. If he gets hurt, I mean, you're losing anyway. So it's I don't know why you wouldn't give him a full workload. He's just clearly the best running back they have. And I mean, even if he's in 70% of the workload he had, he's still underpriced in my opinion. And he should be right there with some of the elite backs. So you just have like asymmetrical upside with Kyren Williams. It's also an awesome game. Arizona doesn't defend well at all. And on the ground, I think it's solid. So I'm using a lot of these pivot running backs like Kyren and Rachaad White as leverage off Taylor. And I think that makes a lot of sense because of the construction stuff. And these are good pivots, good matchups, high total games, a lot of interest in just mixing and matching these running backs.
Yeah. So the Sims tool is telling a little bit of a different story, but it has one thing very much in common with what I believe this week. And that is that Travis Etienne and Saquon Barkley are going to be running backs I just don't get to at 7K. I didn't even bring them up in the 7K range, mainly because I don't understand how I play any more than like 10% of either of them in large field. And as such, I'm just getting to like 0 of them. I have 2% Saquon Barkley, although he did show up in the Sims tool from the get-go. I think part of that is just me wanting to give a little bit of a boost to Kyren Williams. I am feeling better, even just seeing that blurb about Kyren Williams, seeing kind of where the chips fall with him specifically leading into lock. There's a Q tag. Well, he has an IR next to him over on DraftKings. And then Rachaad White has the Q tag next to him. Sometimes you see kind of an artificial downgrade in ownership just as a result of that. So that's kind of a fascinating subplot here for some of my lineups. But I want to talk about Jalen Warren because this is my disturbing, disgusting. I am just playing Matt Canada. Can we just establish he was probably the worst offensive coordinator in the NFL, or do you have somebody else off the top of your head that it was somehow worse?
I'd have to think about it. I'm not prepared to answer this question, but I wouldn't argue against bottom 3 and probably the worst.
Probably the worst. He's absolutely pitiful, dog doo-doo, all the words for it. He gone, friends. He gone. They go to Cleveland. Weird to fire him after a Cleveland spot where it's like a very difficult difficult situation. But I'm not saying Kenny Pickett is going to get unleashed. And I'm not saying that this is going to be something where Jaylen Warren just gets jammed. But any change to an offensive coordinator or to potential play calling duties always breeds the opportunity for the better player to get a massive workload. So I'm just saying, Jaylen Warren, his path to massive upside at a cheap tag that allows me to play whatever stacks I want, get all the Josh Allen, Josh Hurts things that I need. I just think it's worth the $5,400 shot in the dark here. He's what, the 8th highest owned running back? I get Ramondre at 5,800. I get some of these other pieces, but like Jaylen Warren's been the far better back between him and Najee Harris. And now there's a legitimate opportunity to have Jaylen Warren get 75% of the snaps, even if that's a lower range outcome. And as such, I have to play a lot of him against a Cincinnati team that is in shambles post Mr. Burrow being eliminated for the season. How do you feel about Jaylen Warren and anybody else in the 5K range that you're interested in jamming?
I think Jaylen Warren maybe has the most fragile projection at running back today. So there's a lot of things you can do with this if you think, like it sounds like you think he could see a larger workload, which I think that would probably be the rational thing to do as a coaching staff. He's just run laps around Najee Harris, who continues to run like he's wearing jeans. But there's also that assumption of rational coaching. Like, this is a Najee I'm talking about is a player.
I know, it was so funny. The visual, it's like I could see him. It's like when people talk about Draymond Green wearing a backpack. Once you see it, you don't unsee it. It's like Draymond Green.
Yeah. And now Najee Harris, he does run like he's wearing jeans. Anyway, they spent a first round pick on him. So, I mean, you also have to, I think, just like when you play Jaylen Warren, you are assuming rational coaching, which I don't think can be assumed. This could be a 50-50 committee. And I think it's almost just as likely that they do that versus giving Jaylen Warren a full workload.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's the thing. There are girls that I dated that I liked very much, but you know what happens when you fall out of love with them? You break up. Break up with Najee Harris. It's not worth it anymore. It's not worth it.
They should do that. I don't know that they will, is the thing. You know what I mean?
It's that high school girlfriend that just keeps coming back into your life at periods of time where it's like, oh, she looked really good today. All right.
Okay, so to speak to Jaylen Warren, I understand the play, and I think if you have a take and you think this is likely, like your take, play a lot of Jaylen Warren. I'm coming in slightly under the field, and it's not even anything because of him. I think he does have the upside, but he's 500 less than James Conner. He's 700 less than Rachaad White. So I'm just playing running backs I have a little more confidence in workload-wise rather than Jaylen Warren. But I think this is also dependent on your field size. I think I'm playing a little bit smaller fields than you today. Mm-hmm. Usually, or most of my lineups are around like the 10K range. I do have some Millie Maker stuff, but once you get down to like 10,000 entries or less, I don't know if you need to be taking on this risk at running back. So as always, consider your field size. I think the larger you go, the more interest I would have in Jaylen Warren. And I didn't run sims for like contests that large. In the smaller field stuff that I'm playing, I didn't get a ton of him, but I'm guessing you running the larger field, it probably gave you more.
Yeah. It did.
That makes sense to me.
Yep. Just ever so slightly. Again, there's pieces of news coming up in the afternoon window. One, I want to see what happens with Darrell Henderson if he's activated. Two, the most important one, Marquise Brown. If he ends up out, that's going to change everything that I'm doing at the wide receiver position. I'm playing a lot of Khalil Shakir right now, but that's more of as a placeholder. That could turn into a lot of Greg Dortch, a lot of Rondale Moore very, very quickly. It'll probably get spread out to some of that as is, but wanted to at least throw out here at the running back position. The one thing that's not changing for me early on is I'm playing a cheap Jaylen Warren, because if he gets a larger workload than anticipated, I want to be a part of that family. Like, that seems fun. And at 5,400, it's less risk than inheriting, 6,800 DeAndre Swift in the afternoon window where, it's a Buffalo defense that hasn't exactly been stellar. And DeAndre Swift has been getting the majority of the workload, but like, he's exceeded 20 fantasy points in one football game all season long, and I don't feel like I'm missing out on a lot at 6,800. At 5,400, I feel like I would miss out a lot on Jaylen Warren if he gets the bulk of the workload here, which I think is already expected, and then it could get really, really nice there. But we continue on our merry way. Are there some low-owned options here? Javonte Williams, somebody that's 10.9% owned now. I thought he would end up being a lot lower owned. That didn't end up happening. James Cook, 6,200. He's 2% owned, and strange to me considering how popular Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts are going to be here in this spot. But like, I think efficient, like everything else besides the guys we just talked about, I think is pretty efficient ownership at the running back position.
I think so. What range do you want me to talk about specifically? There's a lot of chalk.
I want to know, like, anybody in the 6K range. Like, people are playing Derrick Henry. I'm not really playing Derrick Henry today, so I get Derrick Henry against Carolina. They're terrible, they're pitiful, but they have a 20 implied team total here. Derrick Henry could always bounce off 150 and a tutty, and at 6,400, that does a lot for you. But like, I think there's just receiving game volume in the likes of a Taylor and a White, or some of these other pieces, Kyren Williams for sure, that I'm just a lot more intrigued to get to, rather than Derrick Henry relying on 30 touches somehow, some way, which just hasn't been happening this season.
Yeah, I'm a little underweight on Derrick Henry. Not much. I'm coming in around 9% in my own portfolio. I don't really have anything to add. He splits time with Tajay Spears, and this is a really volatile, two bad teams facing each other. So, I mean, it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility for Carolina to get a lead, and then Derrick Henry is just absolutely cooked because Tajay Spears will play in the pass game more than him. But I think there's some pretty decent chalk at the top. I'm playing a considerable amount of Isaiah Pacheco, 6,200. No Jerick McKinnon. The Vegas Raiders do not have Max Crosby. I know he's mainly a pass rusher, but he's very good against the run as well. That's setting up pretty well. Ramondre is my least favorite piece of chalk. Mm-hmm. Splitting time with Ezekiel Elliott, another bad game, which I would not be surprised if New York comes out and takes a lead in this game, which would be shocking. But we've got the Giants. We got quarterback roulette in New England. Neither one of them has been any good. Ezekiel Elliott has a pretty sizable workload in this backfield. I would rather just play James Conner, who's a little bit less owned than him. I'd rather go down and play Javonte Williams, Jalen Warren even. I'm just going to guys cheaper. You can flip the build a little bit and play the more expensive guys like Kyren, who I certainly prefer. Even a guy like Bijan, he's seeing more work playing New Orleans. Not the best matchup, but man, I think there's a ton of fragility with Ramondre in this game, even though the matchup's pretty good. Otherwise, low-owned guys I have some interest in. Going all the way down, Jerome Ford has piqued my interest a little bit. People seem to have really turned the corner on Denver's defense, who was horrific in the first half of what we've seen so far this year, and then they've held up a little bit better of late. You always have Kareem Hunt to vulture touchdowns, but Ford's been explosive and efficient. He's a player I'm interested in, the single-digit range for ownership, but otherwise I think it's pretty cut and dry. A lot of the pivots I like, we already talked about.
To recap for the people, again, we have 4,000 people now watching live. Smash that like button. So good to see the high point here of the show with Matt Gajewski and myself. Just 48 minutes here before lock. Really good stuff. Smash the like button here. But we're going to play a game of good chalk, bad chalk. Jonathan Taylor.
I think he's good chalk.
Same. Ramondre Stevenson. You said bad chalk.
I think so, yes.
Isaiah Pacheco.
I think good.
Rashad White.
Good.
Kyren Williams.
Good.
Saquon Barkley.
Bad.
Travis Etienne.
I'm neutral on Etienne. He's not that chalky either.
Yeah, 15%. I like him more than I like the Saquon piece, and I bet the Giants, so it is what it is. But God, this is just we have never been more in line at a running back position, besides maybe Jalen Warren. I'm going a little bit nuts with him today, but I think we've never been this in lockstep at the running back position. I will say also, I have no idea how much Josh Jacobs I'm going to get to yet. It's going to depend completely on how my lineups look early. And then also, I'm just going to have to get a feel for how popular Kyren Williams is going to be, because he has treated me well all season long. I think our best live before lock was before that Indy game on the road, where I can't remember who it was that ended up being inactive, but we jammed Kyren Williams for everybody on that show 5-10 minutes before lock, and it ended up being the difference maker. You needed Kyren Williams. You've actually needed Kyren Williams on 3 slates this season. 3. He's been in the Millie Maker winner 2 times already this season. The winner, not just even talking optimal. He could have been optimal in that San Francisco game, 28 that he put up there, but wasn't in the Millie Maker winner. Wild stuff from Kyren Williams because of that workload. So just want to throw that out there. Anything else at the running back position before we move on?
I don't think so. think we hit on just about everyone. I do like DeAndre Swift a little more than you, and it's mainly just a leverage play off Jalen Hurts. So he's the only other guy I would really mention. You're not getting a ton of ownership on DeAndre Swift. He's coming in just above the double-digit mark, and Hurts is going to be very owned. So I think that just comes down to, do they get down on the 1 yard line and Hurts gets the rushing touchdowns, or do they score from like the 5 and Swift has more of a chance?
It's going to be... Is there something more tilting than having like DeAndre Swift on your year long, them getting to the 1 and knowing that you're going to get punished? There can't be
that is still, I don't have him. I play in 1 season long league. He's not on my team. My team stinks.
Well, it's all right. You got to pray. Yeah. Dear 8 pounds, 6 ounce, newborn infant Jesus. Don't even know a word yet. That's Talladega Nights as well. Anywho, this is Owner's Box, my friends. Smash it. Also, Jordan Klein, pull up the player compare tool. We're going to start off the wide receiver position with that here in a second. But Owner's Box, my friends, they are the sponsor of Live Before Lock, have been all season long. And here's why you want to play over there. It's called Overlay. It's really good for your bankroll. It is money getting put in your pocket to be able to go over and play at a site and know that you're getting your money in good. And when you have the Sims tool here at Stokastic, you're able to integrate those lineups right away to Owner's Box. There's also this great promotion we have going with them, $250 bonus. So a lot of these bonuses, these first deposit first match bonuses, they're $100 capped, like $100 across the board. This is $250. That is a massive difference to your bankroll to be able to get an extra $250 of ammunition to a tournament like this that is only 52% full. The 100K kickoff, 20K to first, is just 52% full with less than 45 minutes here before lock. It is going to overlay. It is overlaid every single time this season. And that overlay over a long period of time makes it the best spot that you could put your money here today as we're playing DFS. So check them out. You don't have to deal with defense. You don't have to deal with kickers. You get an opportunity to do super flex. Like this is college football DFS. And Matt Gajewski knows college football DFS is the best football variant, period, end of story. And Owner's Box is bringing that to you every single week. That is their main game type, is playing over there and having an opportunity to stack up a full game, to be able to have 4 running backs, to do all of these great things with those super flex positions. So check it out, my friends. Owner's Box. You sign up at the link, get yourself $250 of a first match deposit bonus. You could do anything from $10 up to that $250 number. When you sign up, you get a $5 lightning lineup, you get a $5 contest ticket, and so much more, plus this opportunity for overlay. So check out Owner's Box, please, right now. Really good stuff at the link that Jordan Klein put into chat or in the video description box of this video down below. Thank you so much to them, but thank you to them for putting DFS players first and giving us an opportunity to build, sustain, and crush with our bankrolls here throughout the season. So thank you to Owner's Box. Love having them along for the program all season long. Alrighty, y'all, we continue on our merry way. I had Jordan Klein pull up the player compare tool here at Stokastic, and this is basically an opportunity for us to look at a huge piece of today's slate. Michael Pittman versus Tank Dell. Now, you have A.J. Brown, Christian Kirk, they're popular as well, but Michael Pittman has been steamed. It's like a 140-degree sauna in here. Michael Pittman is up to what? 21.3% ownership in our last run. Tank Dell, 14.1%. I want to have the player compare tool do a little bit of the work for us here as we're taking a look at both of them. Who do you prefer? Because it is pretty sizable in the player compare tool and in the Sims that Michael Pittman is also good chalk.
I prefer Tank Dell. I think he's playing in
let's hear it.
I think he's playing in a better situation with a better quarterback, and I don't see a lot of differences in their volume. With Pittman, a lot of his recent production came with Josh Downs either injured or banged up in games, exiting games. I don't know if he's going to retain this volume with Josh Downs back. It was pretty close to a 1A, 1B situation before Downs left, and Downs wasn't even on the injury report this week. So we saw great rapport between Minshew and Downs prior to the injury. When you just look at the fragility of both situations, I think you can poke more holes in Pittman versus Tank Dell at this point. So I'll split that tie by just going to the player I know is going to get targets, whereas I think Pittman could be looking at a slightly reduced share now that they have another competent receiver back in the room.
I just want to throw out this optimal percentage is wild. 11.1% for Tank Dell, 20.5% optimal percentage for Michael Pittman. The boom opportunity for Pittman. I mean, this is a wild discrepancy between the two. I'm with you where it's like in the onset, a better situation, CJ Stroud, the game environment at home against Jacksonville, a team that has obviously been more porous here lately in the secondary. There's definitely some major upside here for Tank Dell, but I'm not getting to him nearly as much as I was anticipating. I did bet the living shit out of him, though. Loved the over of 60.5. It's moved up to 63.5, I believe, across the entire industry. Still like getting in at that number. But yeah, Michael Pittman, from a DFS perspective today against Tampa Bay, where they are a run funnel or a pass funnel for sure. It's going back to some of those roots, not as noticeable as what it was maybe 2 years ago for all of you DFS truthers who were there in 2021. And you knew Tampa Bay were going to shut down every running back before the game even started. Hopefully not today with Jonathan Taylor, that's for sure. But let's go to the expensive range, my friend, because A.J. Brown, Stephon Diggs, Jamar Chase at 2.7%. Is Jake Browning the worst quarterback in the history of the Pac-12 the same way that Tommy DeVito was? Because if so, Tommy DeVito looked good against Washington. I think crazier things happen. Well, no, this would be insane to have Jamar Chase go completely nuclear here with Jake Browning. But Cooper Kupp, 8K. He is another guy that I'm just going to play a ton of with Puka Nacua here. So at the 8K range and above, who is your preferred building block?
It's still going to be AJ Brown and Diggs, just with the game environment they're in, the lack, I guess, of quarterbacks in the other game environments that we can look to. But it's a tough range overall. I thought I would be more exposed to this range. So just like looking at the players up here, I have AJ Brown in 13.5% of my lineup. So it's very specific subset. And the same thing can be said when I look at the lineup ownerships I have with Stephon Diggs. As far as the pivots from those guys go, because I think they should be the two most owned, I have the most interest in Cooper Kupp. You get a little bit of savings going down to him. When he's been healthy, the target volume has been comparable between, AJ Brown, Stephon Diggs, and Kupp. And this game environment's awesome too, LA versus Arizona. I think the reduced ownership you're getting is because of the ankle sprain last week, but they've known for like 72 hours that he's going to play, not even close to a game time decision. I'm just going to be treating him like he's fully healthy, to be honest with you.
Okay. That's good to know. I just wanted to at least throw it out there. Just throw it out there that Cooper Kupp is going to be popular for me. Not popular, it doesn't seem. 11.9% for him, 11.1% for Puka Nacua. I'll love as we go to the 7K range him, but this 7K range I think is just awesome. Like phenomenal. Devonta Smith, Adam Thielen, Mike Evans, Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams. I am overweight to everybody except for Devontae Adams. I'm pretty neutral on Mike Evans, right around 10%, but my gosh, these guys are target rich. It's a target rich environment. 7K, 6K range. This is where our money is going on today's slate, it would appear. And then, yeah, AJ Brown, Stephon Diggs, pretty tough there at the top of the range as well. Love Stephon Diggs. AJ Brown, I'm probably not going to get to 16, 18% of him like the field is, but 7K range, Matt Gajewski, who are you firing up in tournaments?
Yeah, this is a great range. And I like especially going to guys like Devonta Smith to save that extra salary just because of, like pricing up defenses, not having a ton of value outside of really dusty guys like Justin Watson. This is a way where you can flip the build a little bit and still play, semi-comparable target shares. And then you just hope that AJ Brown and Diggs don't put up like their nuclear ceiling games. So I love Dell in this range. I have a ton of that game. So it's not just Dell. Have Nico Collins as a pivot, have Ridley, have Kirk, who's a little bit less expensive, not quite in this range. But Devonta Smith, I think, is an excellent pivot off AJ Brown, who's going to be very owned. Puka Nacua, same thing with him and Cooper Kupp. They're pretty close in price. I still prefer Kupp. But yeah, awesome range overall. The Bucs receivers make a lot of sense. I'd be careful with them with Baker because he's going to be owned. Whereas some of these other receivers, I think you can get at a discount stack-wise.
Yeah, the cheapies are going to be guys that we talk about for a long time. I think a majority of the rest of our show is going to be parsing through these 5K, 4K receivers. But yeah, finding building blocks here above it. I think Tank Dell, Michael Pittman, Christian Kirk here as we get into the 5K range. I think these are all really good pieces of chalk again. It is so hard for me looking at some of the chalk today and not enjoying it. That's why I'm happy that I'm on a stack like the Rams, that I like Adam Thielen at 10.9%, who I think probably ends up a little bit lower than that against the Tennessee secondary. His receiving prop has been sitting at 6.5 receptions all week long. And that's a team with just a 17 implied total. In Tennessee, second worst in the NFL guarding the wide receiver position, giving up the second most fantasy points to them. Adam Thielen going to be somebody that I want to be overweight to here at 7,300, which sounds insane to say out loud. In fact, I almost puked even just saying that. Skol, baby. But 6K range, Nico Collins, 10.1%. I got to imagine if you like Tank Dell, you like getting to a little bit of Nico Collins in your life. And he kind of pivots off of Dell Pittman here because, I mean, I think Dell Pittman have the best projections, should be the guys who are the highest owned, but like, I don't want to sleep on Nico Collins here.
I'm not sleeping on him. I like him as a pivot off Dell. Just like this passing attack quite a bit in general, even going all the way down to Woods, who we'll talk about when we get to the dusty, cheap receivers everyone will play. But yeah, like Ridley in this range, I have a fair amount of Hopkins as leverage off that Derrick Henry chalk. He's just had an awesome workload. Levis, we know what he is. He's a rookie, second-round rookie quarterback. He's not the most efficient, but Carolina's defense provides no resistance. I actually think the Levis-Hopkins stack is really interesting in the largest of fields, playing that a little bit in the Millie Maker, and then running it back with some Carolina stuff that I don't feel good about, but pretty condensed ownership at the quarterback situation, so we'll give it a shot. Otherwise, Olave is somewhat interesting. If you made me rank like a fifth game I wanted to stack, it would probably be this New Orleans-Atlanta. Pretty big drop-off between the top four in this one, but target monster, no Michael Thomas. Someone has to receive those targets to some degree. Yeah, I think the good games, the players in the good games are the ones we really want to hone in on in this spot, but I like the pivots.
Let's start digging into these cheapies. Because again, Marquise Brown, if he ends up out, the amount of Greg Dortch that I will have and Rondale Moore that I will have it's truly going to be disturbing. Like, it's going to be a problem for me. Marquise Brown, please play football, because I would like to play him with the Q tag next to it, similar to Kyron Williams with the Q tag next to it, similar to Rashad White with the Q tag next to it. You see that artificial downgrade in ownership that just seems to show up because of how many casual people we get playing in the NFL streets on a week in, week out basis. I don't think Drake London's going to be a part of my life here whatsoever. I guess you have Desmond Ridder at 4,800. He has won somebody $1 million this season. That's the nicest thing I can say. Probably didn't win himself $1 million going forward after some of these performances, but he might, I think he'll be okay. I think he'll be okay in life. But this 5K range, not my favorite. Gabriel Davis pulling zero ownership, which is kind of strange to me considering how popular Josh Allen's going to be and Jalen Hurts is going to be. 5,300. He's put up a couple of game-breaking performances, even though it doesn't feel like it. Week 5, week 8, saw both of those come to fruition, and he smashed alongside Josh Allen. So weird to see no ownership coming in on him, but like, I get it. This range sucks. Do you have anything here at 5K?
Not really at 5K. This is the range I'm really kind of just least interested in. I'd rather go up and get so above 5K, I do have interest in Christian Kirk at 5,700, but going down below that, Rashee Rice is laughably overpriced. The Denver receivers stink. I don't have a ton of interest in Marquise Brown, even if he does play. I guess you could tell yourself a story about being the number one with Kyler, but that hasn't really amounted to anything this year. I'd rather just play Trey McBride. Not playing Drake London. I guess right below that, Deontay Johnson's somewhat interesting given the offensive change. Same thing with Pickens. Downs is probably my favorite in this range, just as leverage off Pittman. And we didn't really see a vast target difference when he was previously healthy. But I'm not landing on this range a lot in general. When I am, it's basically just a couple one-off lineups. Otherwise, it's more of the stars and scrubs approach.
Scrubs time, baby. You ready to rock?
Yeah.
4K and 3K. I have so many of these guys, and I'm going to list a few of them and see kind of where you're landing. Josh Downs, again, a piece of chalk that I think is pretty decent. I have more Gardner Minshew than you, so obviously I'm bringing Josh Downs along for the ride. Demario Douglas, 4,400. Who else does New England throw it to besides maybe him and Hunter Henry? Even Devontae. I mean, these guys are just terrible. Juju Smith-Schuster, one of the worst contracts you could ever imagine handing a person. You basically didn't watch Kansas City play football one time last year, and you had lots of opportunities to watch the team that won the Super Bowl play football last year in order to give him that kind of a contract, but it is what it is. Demario Douglas, 4,400, going to get there. But Rashid Shaheed, 4,300. I don't think his situation changes. I think you probably see A.T. Perry come in, play more of that Michael Thomas role. I don't really have a ton of A.T. Perry at 3,200, but I think I'm going to have more than the field does, that's for sure. But Rashid Shaheed at 4,300, we know he has that game-breaking speed. We know he can be that guy that maybe sees a couple of extra targets. In Atlanta, they've been good against the wide receiver position, second fewest fantasy points allowed, but do we see a shift in his role? I'm not positive, but I'm willing to find out more than 7% of the time, considering that's his ownership here today. Who are the 4K guys that you're looking at the most?
Yeah, this range is, I think, just exceedingly gross. And I'm going to go below 4.5. So Demario Douglas, I think, is the worst piece of chalk on the entire slate. Trying to come in severely under the field on him. I considered Xing him. There's a chance he's the wide receiver 5 today when you factor in Juju, Devontae Parker, Hunter Henry, Ramondre Stevenson, Mike Gesicki. Like, his routes could get cut. His targets could get cut. He's playing with the combination of Mac Jones and Zappy. So for me, like, he needs to be the locked in wide receiver 1 if I'm going to eat 4.4K chalk for a New England receiver. And I don't think that's clear at all. This is a incredibly volatile situation in projections. And if we're just assuming he's the wide receiver 1 here, 5th round rookie out of Liberty playing with horrific quarterbacks, like, I still might X him. I think he's the worst play on the entire slate that's getting ownership. Shaheed, I have a lot more interest in. Just not sure what the role is going to look like now that Michael Thomas is out. So I'm willing to bet on that if he were to get more targets. Otherwise, Robert Woods, I think, is fine. He's just a cheap, heavily targeted, but not very efficient attachment to CJ Stroud. I don't know. I guess I'll save the sub 4K guys for a second here. But yeah, really, really do not like Demario Douglas. I will not be playing him.
Okay. Well, I wasn't planning on it all that much, although the Sims tool, definitely getting to a little bit more of it. Yeah, you're going to change quarterbacks. You're going to have Zappy. Go ahead.
There's a human entering inputs into what goes into the sim.
Correct.
I severely disagree with the role on the projection for New England. I understand that it's volatile, but I do not think he should be projected as the wide receiver 1.
I'm with you. And so I've reran some stuff where I reduced his projection. And again, that's the beauty of the Sims tools, is being able to take our data and be able to analyze it based on comparing your lineups against each other, having them compete. That is what a simulation does, is you run that 10,000 times and you get an opportunity to see what comes to the top based on your payout structure more and more and more, so you can make more money, have more targets at the top. So I'm with you. Demario Douglas, somebody I have 2% of. So good luck to me. Rip ahead of time. But before we get to that 3K range, of course, we gotta get some super chats here for the people. First of all, Nicholas Lynn, Baker or Minshew stack in a small field single? I prefer Minshew. How about you?
I prefer Baker.
Okay. And then we've got Jordan Klein, Matt Gajewski TV fun. That's always good when your producer is trolling you from the back. Appreciate you, Jordan Klein. Thank you for adding so much to our program. Good job. Lucas Alvarado, $1.99. Thank you so much. Douglas, Cooper, Godwin, or London, full PPR. Pick one. So Douglas, Cooper, Godwin, London. It is Godwin by a mile for me.
Agreed.
Jake Lindland, $1.99. FanDuel 555, big spender. Top 3 plays at each position. So let's head on over to FanDuel, shall we? Because the pricing is significantly different between the two sites. I try to play both sites here. I have a couple of lineups that I rolled out over on FanDuel for today, but I think the biggest difference, you see some of these running backs like, why Jalen Warren? It's just like freaking expensive over here. Or I guess Yahoo was the site that they were talking about a little bit earlier, where he was just like crazy there. But over on FanDuel today, top position plays, I have my lineups here. I think the best quarterback play is still Jalen Hurts when you're talking about cash games between the two sites. Jonathan Taylor's still going to be a piece on both. Pacheco going to be a piece on both. Swift a little bit cheaper over on FanDuel, so that's cool. Kind of nifty stuff there. And then I'm going to give you, Dalton Kincaid, completely different. I have way more Trey McBride on DK. Dalton Kincaid is really, really nice on FanDuel. Who are some of your favorite plays for FanDuel purposes?
So I think Stroud is underpriced relative to what we see on DK. Jonathan Taylor's price just is laughable on FanDuel. He should be like probably the first guy in your lineups. And then I'm still really interested in Rachaad White over there at 7K flat. Those would be my 2 running back plays I look to. And the reason I didn't say more quarterbacks, because I'll echo you with Jalen Hurts. He's underpriced. But I do think Stroud is an interesting pivot over there. As far as receivers go on FanDuel, I think it's a little bit trickier because Tank Dell's priced up pretty high relative to some other guys. So I like Devontae Smith as a pivot. His price really stands out. I like Nico Collins as a pivot at 6,900 down there. And then Christian Kirk at 68. So rather than go all the way up, I think you can get a lot of really good and highly projected receivers target-wise in that like low 7, upper 6K range.
Fantasy Guru 76, $5 super chat, $5 foot long. Value, running back, FanDuel, Jonathan Taylor. There we are. Found it. Give him a couple more there for FanDuel as we're looking at it here on the board. Again, Rachaad White, a little bit worse of a play compared to DK for me, but still in play. Javonte Williams, that's a pretty big difference.
My 3 favorite values on FanDuel at the running back position are Jonathan Taylor, Rachaad White, and Isaiah Pacheco.
Love. My filler arc, $4.99, is all the Tommy Terrible, the tight end from Carolina today. So Tommy Tremble, or should I not even bother with DFS today? Is it all Tommy Tremble? No, it will not be all Tommy Tremble for me. It could be all Trey McBride. He's my highest owned tight end by a ways, and it looks like he'll be the most popular, but I don't care.
I wouldn't play Tommy Tremble. The routes weren't great. I know he fell into the end zone last week, but I think you're taking on a lot of risk.
Trip on your own foot into the end zone. That's a fun way to score. And you don't score until you score. Until you score, baby. Yeah. It's American Pie.
That one I've never seen.
Okay. Sub 4K wide receiver. Let's get ourselves the heck up out of here and get over to tight end for the people. Arizona. Just asterisk. I don't know what to make of the situation until we get official Marquise Brown news.
He's expected to play, so
okay,
I wouldn't.
Good. He didn't practice like all week.
I don't know, man. I don't make those decisions, but there was a Shafty or whatever, whoever tweeted it, one of those insiders, Pelissero or someone, that he's expected to play.
Oh, that's chill. That's chill. All right. Who else are you looking at sub 4K to round out the position? Because this is Justin Watson season is in effect. You could take a shot on 48 different wide receivers, but it does thin out a little bit. You got Kadarius Toney out. You got McCole Hardman out. Those are 2 human beings that weren't on the field a whole heck of a lot, but I think it shores up a little bit for Justin Watson, who's on the field more than any other wide receiver and also doesn't drop footballs like that idiot MVS, who I am very proud of myself. I have not recommended him one time this season, and surely because I have 0% of him today and coming off of what he did last week, he is going to smash, so you probably want him in your lineups. That's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, he'll probably catch a bomb on the week that you and I don't play him because I play him every week, usually on showdowns. But yeah, I think this all starts with Justin Watson and what you make of his role. He had, 11 targets last week, played more than any other Chiefs receiver. I mean, as of yesterday, I haven't checked this. His reception prop was 1.5. So books are not expecting this to really be a sticky change. I'm not either. The targets ping pong for this team, the routes ping pong for this team. He could run 30% of the routes. He could run 70. I don't know how you feel confident one way or the other. So Watson, I think, is some pretty volatile chalk. I won't call him bad because he's the stone minimum. And even if he does play 30% of the routes, he gets 2 catches for 30 yards. That might be enough depending on what the rest of your lineup does. But I do have a lot of interest in taking these pivots, which is what I'm doing a lot in lineups. I'll just go 4K down in the level of interest for each of these guys. Robert Woods, pretty considerable amount of interest. I'm going to be double digits in my exposure, 12% right now, attachment to CJ Stroud. Zay Jones is somebody I want to get to. If this were week 2 and he was 3,900, he'd be the chalkiest receiver on the entire slate.
Good point.
Wandale at 3,800, playing him in one lineup. I'm not going to go any more on that. Elijah Moore has good target volume. It's just coming from DTR. He's someone I think you could play. You already mentioned the Arizona receivers. I don't even care if Marquise plays. They're all really cheap, and they're going to be on the field every single snap. That would be Dortch and Moore for me. Khalil Shakir, somebody I like a lot. He's basically the wide receiver 2 for the Bills now, with Gabe Davis continuing to be atrocious. Trenton Irwin, he plays every single snap if you can stomach Jake Browning. Trey Palmer, I like him as a contrarian stacking option with the Tampa Bay stack. I'll be around 10% of him. And then lastly, ultimate leverage, MVS, but I think I'd rather go to Sky Moore, honestly.
Yep.
What would you say the chances are that Sky Moore has the role that Justin Watson did last week?
I don't know, but I bet Sky Moore over 14.5 reception yards, and I have to love that. You basically saw Kadarius Toney be eliminated from this offense in a lot of ways, found ways to get back on the field a little bit last week. But then with McCole Hardman now being out as well, this is actually thinned down to a place where I think you want to take random shots on it. Maybe not just for the afternoon slate either, but I mean, the lineup construction you have, everybody feels a lot more confident about Justin Watson than I do. MVS, he has treated me terrible. I have no idea what to make of my life in the MVS era here with Kansas City because I hate it. I hate it so much. But friends, this is just too good of an opportunity to we have to be playing somebody on the Chiefs that isn't just Travis Kelce and Isaiah Pacheco. And I think Rashee Rice at 5,500 is just a little bit too expensive. And that's where Sky Moore at a flat 3K. I think there's a chance that he ends up on the field a little bit more. He's the guy that I'm boosting up to get, a flat 3K changes the complexion of your lineup in a pretty prominent way. And if Justin Watson is going to be 10.2% owned and Sky Moore is going to be 0.6% owned, that's just not right to me.
Yeah, I agree with you. And yes, to the chat, I'm aware of the target numbers. I would recommend you look past the last two games and look at the full body of work that is the Chiefs season. And tell me who led the team in targets every single week beyond Travis Kelce.
Yeah,
you're going to see that it's very volatile. Even with Kadarius Toney and Mecole Hardman being out, this team is going to use Richie James now, presumably. They're going to use Blake Bell and Noah Gray. It's going to be spread 7 ways. I mean, your bet is as good as mine. If everyone's betting Justin Watson, I mean, I'll play some of the other guys. And it's not even like we just said some Chiefs for the pure leverage. I would rather play the other players like Zay Jones and players like that over this Justin Watson chalk.
Give me spicy Matt Gajewski every single day, ending in Y.
Richie James was just an example. They have a million receivers on their team. They bring some up. They're going to use 7 guys is the point.
Yeah, that is the correct point too, by the way. Lots of super chats to get caught up on. I want to check in on some overlay, see where we're at there over in the owner's box streets for the people. Again, 19 minutes before lock, plenty of time to go through tight end defense and get ourselves the heck up out of here. But super chats, Riley Cooper, $14.99. Any love for DTR today? Naked. I always think about stuff like this. Last week was completely different. Super, super cheap down there. You don't need to go there with Gardner Minshew, with Baker Mayfield. There's serviceable cheapies that I didn't think existed last week.
Yeah, I'm not getting there. I had him in one lineup.
Ace of Spades. I will pull up DK tiers here for you here in 2 minutes. That will definitely happen here. Carlos Cabrera, $5. Had to put my 15-year-old dog to sleep 2 days ago. Dude, I'm so sorry. I never really thought of myself as like a quote unquote dog person. And now I feel like I have the coolest dog in the world. Dude, it just makes me so sad. 15 years old. That's an amazing run though. Glad you got to enjoy him. Thanks for the jokes, Eric. Really helps. Keep up the good work, everybody. Man, that was just like, that cut to the core of me, Baxter. Carlos Cabrera, we appreciate you. Sorry for your loss. Dogs are the best. D-Buff, $4.99. DraftKings, your favorite stack for cash and tournament. Cash, no doubt about it. Jalen Hurts. Tournaments, Stafford Nakua Cup. Just end me now.
Levis to Hopkins.
Are you not entertained? That would be phenomenal stuff to put that on social. So good for you. Good on you. Hey, it's our alma mater won last night. We did win last night. Somebody else also had one other super chat. Corey Randall, $5. Appreciate you. Should we be worried about the rain in Philly today for the Buffalo passing game? No.
Yeah, I'm not worried about it.
It comes from the books and we translate that and the projections. Like the projections are factoring all of that in. So you don't have to double count it. Give yourself the opportunity. Yeah, if you want to say it's way worse than expected or you live in Philly and there's that, but like I can't do that. I can't advise people not play Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen. They're good plays. Cool. We're caught up on the super chats. That's great. How are we doing with Owner's Box in the overlay streets? 65% full, 35% of entries yet to fill here on this lovely kickoff here. Again, super cheap opportunity for you to jump over there. Get a deposit bonus, $250 there. in the whole chat thing, and my brain just shut off for 2 seconds, just like reading stuff. Excellent combo today. I like the good chalk, bad chalk takes. I try to mix it up, try to add some innovation, just trying to ease the tension, baby. Ease the tension. Also, it's always fun to watch me get worked up and really hyper and really excited, and then watch Gajewski give me nothing back.
I got excited about Demario Douglas.
You did, and you got spicy at the chat. It was so nice.
I love the chat.
I love the chat too. We love you guys so much. More tension. Oh, there used to be a show that we did 3 years ago where it was a 3-man booth of Laffy, Matt Gajewski, and myself. And Matt and I got into it on that show every week. Those were incredible times.
I don't even remember why. And I think the chat overplayed. Yeah, like what we were just having spirited debate, man. That's what this is about.
That is what it's about, baby. That's what it's about. But friends, check out Owner's Box there. Again, 15 minutes before lock. Let's jump on over to tight end, Trey McBride, Holy Mother of God. I mean, his role is that of Mark Andrews and nearly that of a Travis Kelce. And like, this is just, he is so underpriced still that it's impossible for me to get away from building out lineups with him. He's in the game environment I want to have the most exposure to. He is just so tough to not put into lineups today. I'm going to play a little bit of Evan Ingram because it seems as though like people don't want to play Evan Ingram nearly as much. So I'm okay with that. But like Trey McBride, confirmed good chalk, right?
Yeah, he is tied for my most owned tight end with Evan Ingram.
Okay.
So I'm going to be playing a ton of him.
All right. I love it. And why is this role so good, Matt Gajewski?
He has like a 25% target share.
There's that. There you go.
I mean, I think that's really just it. He's more he should be more expensive than Marquise Brown. So, and he fills a position that is just devoid of talent across the league right now. And we don't have some of the studs on this slate. Kelsey's way up there in price on a slate that's just extremely tight in pricing. So, I mean, he makes a ton of sense. I'll be playing a lot of Trey McBride. There's no real holes I think you can poke in him.
Nope, absolutely none. I'm in love with playing Trey McBride today. You should be playing some Trey McBride. The Sims have him still as one of the highest expected guys in terms of ROI. So hard to get away from. Dalton Kincaid, a little bit more expensive, but also pulling some ownership. Evan Ingram pulling in some ownership, but 4,200, that does a lot for you here. Let's talk about Travis Kelce, because we know Travis Kelce can break the tight end position any given week. I like playing him a lot as singles, him and Patrick Mahomes. I'm going to try to fit in some Sky Moore, some Justin Watson into the fray with it too. Gives me some access even with those expensive guys in Mahomes and Kelce to be able to build out some well-rounded lineups. But how are you planning to utilize Travis Kelce? Because sub 10%, that kind of catches your eye on a 10-game slate.
Yeah, I have 0. There's other players that have comparable volume to him right now. His efficiency is way down. Mahomes is expensive, so the stack is like egregiously prohibitive. If he beats me, he beats me. But I would rather play Diggs, AJ Brown, and players with just elite ceilings in their stacks.
I don't know. Eric is like, funny. It says that no, I love him. Oh, you love me. That's so nice. I feel loved. That's good. Let's just open up the entire tight end position. Are there some guys that you feel are coming in underutilized by the field? I only have one that I can kind of like highlight, star, center, circle, and it's Daniel Bellinger, so I'm going to stop talking.
He's one too. I think you have like a big 3 in terms of ownership, which makes sense. They're just the best plays. McBride, Kincaid, Evan Ingram. I think Njoku is going to be chalkier than people think. He's just been like the one pivot everyone's mentioned all week because he catches 11 screens and falls down and maybe gets in the end zone once. As far as true pivots go, I have a lot of interest in Dalton Schultz. 100 more than Kincaid, doesn't project quite as well, but a part of that elite Houston passing attack. So that's a place I'm willing to spend up a little bit to be different. I think once you get to the cheaper guys is where you can really take some shots where you don't even need to put them in a large portion of your portfolio and you'll gain positive leverage. Hunter Henry, again, people are just assuming Pop Douglas is the wide receiver 1 there. I'm not making that assumption. Henry very well could be. Cade Otton's on the field every single play for Tampa Bay. He'll be somewhat chalky, but he's also at a different price point. He just doesn't leave the field. Pat Freiermuth played like 34% of the routes last week. Like, do we really think he's a 34% route player? First game back from injury. This guy's like 90%. when he's fully healthy. So, I mean, I just flat out do not believe that his role now moving forward is 34% of the routes. So I'll take shots on Freiermuth. And then, yeah, Bellinger was one that you could sprinkle. Jawan Johnson, he might be the straight up replacement for Michael Thomas. He's built kind of like that. So I don't know. A lot of people just assume it's A.T. Perry. He's worth a sprinkle, I think. But otherwise, it's pretty bleak down here.
Extremely bleak. Yeah, the Daniel Bellinger thing is purely because as you start to thin out the wide receiver core, Daniel Bellinger might be involved in the offense a little bit more. Tommy DeVito, we saw signs of life. I know it was against Washington. I know he's still terrible, and Matt Gajewski will echo that, but Daniel Bellinger is 2,900, and Pat Freiermuth, completely different situation now with the offensive coordinator shift and firing Matt Canada. Like, I think Pat Freiermuth maybe ends up with a little bit more ownership, and I'm happy to just embrace Daniel Bellinger as one contrarian piece down here. Michael Mayer, no thank you. Not really going to be firing that one up here. Gets really, really thin. Going to be parts of stacks that I get to. Like, I think Okonkwo, somebody that I'm constantly putting with Levis and Hopkins and hoping that something good happens. You know, it's like the gif with the guy with the stick where it's like, do something. That one. Anyway, Malcolm Revamp, $1.99. Eric, should I eat the chalk or go contrarian? What? I mean, there's good chalk and there's bad chalk. We've talked about good chalk and bad chalk. You can play chalk. You just you got to find ways of building high ROI lineups. What a question for Malcolm Revamp.
Yeah, I mean, I think you should be playing some chalk, not all of it, and more chalk if you're playing smaller field stuff. Less if you're playing larger field and you need to hit just the absolute nuts.
Mm-hmm. But don't hit yourself in the nuts. That hurts. Let's go to defense, friends. 10 minutes to go. Smash the like button. Please get us up over 1,000. I know Lofty's not here. He's generally the guy who gets all the likes, but you know, I'm going to whore myself out for it right now. Just please makes me happy. Makes me look cooler, or makes me, I don't know. I'm not cool. I'll never be cool. But defense, this is cool. We got some guys that we can roster to get different here. Chiefs, Patriots, rightfully very, very popular there at the top of the board. I really like the Broncos, as does the Sims tool. Going up against Cleveland at DTR at home, Denver's defense playing better and better and better. It's helpful to have Patrick Surtain. He's very good at the footballs. I like the Broncos defense and what we've seen from them in primetime spots, and now finally on a main slate here against Cleveland. I'm happy to fire them up. Titans, another team to get a little contrarian with, although I have enough Adam Thielen that not going to jump way to the top of the board for me. But who are the defenses you're landing on the most, Matt?
Yeah, you just said my top four, so I guess.
Oh, that's chill.
I mean, I just let the tool tell me what to do. I literally spent no time even considering this. So beyond that, I got a sprinkling of the Rams to try to justify what the sim gave me, even though it's a supercomputer. You're playing Kyler. Their offensive line's not great. Rams have a somewhat decent pass rush, I suppose. They're also extremely cheap. I have a little bit of the Eagles. You're facing Josh Allen, who's been a turnover factory. Eagles are really strong up front. So yeah, they can get beat over the top in their secondary, but they also can generate a phenomenal pass rush against a quarterback who plays like Tommy DeVito on occasion. And then I have a little bit of the Giants facing New England. Love playing Zappy. And last one, tiny bit of the Panthers facing Tennessee. Got a rookie quarterback in Levis over there.
These are good things. Yeah, I think that was a pretty clear cut. Always looking at the cheapest defense. I guess this is probably my one take, and this is something that's happening more for hand builds for me. I really like the Houston defense for tournaments today. 2,600, the absolute floor. I think everybody is looking at Houston and Jacksonville shooting out, and all the most popular players are Tank Dell and Nico Collins and everything else. But sometimes it's good, even if you have those in builds. There are a lot of situations where this game doesn't go nuts. You have zero of those offensive players in those lineups where that defense shows up more than likely. Get to Houston, 2,600. Fire that one up, my friends.
Yeah, I have no issues with that. I mean, there's very little scoring separation, even in projections, between the most expensive and the least expensive. So I think you can always go down. It's more of like a last man in situation. If you've got a lineup you love, only way you can get there is using Houston. That's the kind of situation where I'm okay with it.
Yeah, and for me, it's a lot more comfortable than like a 3,300 Tampa Bay for leverage going up against Indy, because like I find Jonathan Taylor to be good chalk, and as such, going to be tough for me to want to click on that button rather than the stone floor basement defense. So I will just say that.
So like projection wise, there's less than 3 points separating the Browns as the most expensive and Houston is the least expensive.
Yes. It's wild. It's a fun. Oh, what's up? What's up? Oh, I got to do tiers. Tiers, please. Tiers for fears. I got you. I will get that done right now. Thank you, Jordan Klein. What a great producer you are. I've never talked shit about you ever before. Why would you do that? I love you. Tier number 1, my friends, Jalen Hurts, not even remotely close. Tier 2, AJ Brown, Travis Kelce, pretty darn close. AJ Brown going to get a leg up there. Tier 3, Saquon Barkley over Kupp. That's a little bit freaky to me. I'm probably going to go the Kupp direction of that. Also, gives you some late swap because you've got him and Nakua there. If somebody goes completely nuts, or hey, you get to play kind of dealer's choice in that range. Tier 4, Jonathan Taylor, not close. Michael Pittman, actually kind of close. Tier 5, Trevor Lawrence. Tier 6, Rashad White. And Tier 7, Isaiah Pacheco. Oh, there's a Tier 8, Ramondre Stevenson. That's probably the most clear-cut one. Ramondre Stevenson, highest in terms of projection, but James Conner, Jalen Warren, lots of late swap options in that evening window of games with Jerome Ford, Rashee Rice, Amari Cooper. You could get a little bit different there. So I might hold back on the Ramondre and kind of play best available in that tier as well. There you are, Ace of Spades, my guy. Thank you so much. And thank you to Jordan Klein for reminding me. Let's smash that like button here. 3.5K people, 5 minutes left. Get your lineups in if you haven't already. And of course, Owner's Box, talked about them at length because they are awesome. You should want to be signed up and checking out everything there. But Matt Gajewski, to recap for the people, your favorite quarterback to get to today?
So it's still going to be Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts. But if you're pivoting off of that, I think going down in price does make sense in certain lineups. My favorite pivot is Kyler. Doesn't save you a ton of money, but it's over $1,000. And if you're getting really crazy, I am playing some Will Levis in the Millie Maker. But otherwise, I think it's pretty straightforward.
Will Levis. Oh, baby. I'm going to have to just put a couple of those in here as we finish out this show, because I don't know if I could live with myself having heard Will Levis's name 3 times from you today and not have a share or two, because right now I don't think I have any. Yeah, I don't have any right now. Got to get to a little bit. Again, I had that kind of rebuild over on the other end of the Sims tool here because I had the Okonkwo, Hopkins, and Levis where I just kind of isolated them and I wanted to see what those lineups look like. I'm going to add those back to the portfolio and upload in 3 minutes. Again, the Sims tool makes this so easy to do. You can filter out those lineups so you can look directly at which your highest expected ROIs are for that quarterback combination or for Tennessee stacks or for anything of that nature. You can see the QB +2. There we are. I don't have a run back with this lineup. That's fine by me. Again, Sims tool is going to also show you all of those type of builds. Oh, it's so fun to be able to toy with. Yeah, 3 minutes before lock. Easy enough. Uploaded. Done. I have some Levis exposure. There we are. Favorite running backs to get to. Top 3.
Kyren Williams, Rashad White, man, a third.
I love the Kyren Williams call. Just give me all of that you got.
I guess I'm going to say Jonathan Taylor. I do think he's pretty good chalk. Pacheco, between Taylor or Pacheco.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to put Kyren up in the top 3 for me now. Jalen Warren for tournaments. Please God, one time. And then Jonathan Taylor, just good chalk. I'll eat the chalk there with that one. Let's see. Favorite wide receivers to be getting to top 3.
All right. So this is a little tricky. I think you got to do like each price point. At the top, as a pivot, we'll be playing a good amount of Cooper Kupp, but otherwise like the 2 studs. In the mid price range, playing a lot of Tank Dell and Nico Collins. Also have those couple of rogue DeAndre Hopkins Levis stacks. In the cheap end, my 2 favorites are going to be Zay Jones and Robert Woods off pivots off the really cheap chalk. Shakira right there too.
Shakira, always good. I'm here for that. I'm going to be going, just looking at my exposures. The amount of Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua I have could choke a donkey. It would be awful. Love Adam Thielen as somebody to get to as a one-off. Again, that's just 6.5 reception prop. Every time I keep looking over at that, I'm like, is this real? And yes, it's a real thing. They do exist. It's almost Christmas. We're going to see that commercial 50 million times and want to die. But feeling pretty good about Josh Downs on the cheap end here. I have more Minshew than my friend Matt Gajewski, so I'll give him a special shout out here as we get to the tight end position. Hi, Trey McBride. How are you this fine day?
Trey McBride, Kincaid, Engram.
Yep, those are the best 3 plays. If you want to get weird, we talked about a couple of weirdos. Daniel Bellinger doesn't get weirder than that in any way, shape, or form. So good luck to me with that. And defense, favorite defense to get to round out our program.
Chiefs.
Steelers. Let's go. 3,700, just as a tournament defense, one-shot defense. Otherwise, Broncos, my number 1, my highest owned defense. Guys, that does it for Live Before Lock for us here. Thank you to Jordan Klein. Thank you to Owner's Box. Skol tomorrow night. That's what I'm looking forward to. Hey, the Vikings can't lose. It's a beautiful Sunday already. Matt Gajewski, any final words for the people as we get out of here?
Yeah, thank you guys for being here. I hope you all enjoyed the holiday with Thanksgiving. Ready to get back into the final stretch of the season and grind this out. So thank you guys for being here. Let's get it today.
Let's go. It's going to be awesome. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, thank you for all the super chats, the great interaction. Hopefully you had a happy, healthy, safe Thanksgiving. Looking forward to the Christmas spirit here. The next month is going to be awesome. I'm a little kid in a candy store. I love Christmas, but it always has to start the Friday after Thanksgiving. Very, very important point. But friends, let's get out of here. Go follow him at Matt_Gajewski over on the Twitters. Thank you so much to my guy. I'm Eric Lindquist. Go follow me at Eric Lindquist. Best of luck in the NFL today.